Mara, did you and Hazen have a formal event before this?
No, I'm just trying to look marish. Lori, when are we ready to start?
Anytime you're ready, sir.
All right, let's start. Welcome to the regular Board of Commissioners meeting in Matthews for August 23rd, 2021. I'd like to start with some show all who's here tonight. We'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Garner, our town attorney, Charlie Buckley, Commissioner Dave Bland, Commissioner Jeff Miller, Commissioner John Urban, Commissioner Ken McCool, Assistant Town Manager Becky Hawk, Town Clerk Lori Canapino, Town Manager Hazen Blodgett, Communications Coordinator Maureen Keith, our Planning Director Jay Camp, just turned his camera on there, and Commissioner Larry Whitley. Can you turn on your camera, sir? While Mr. Whitley is doing that, I'll remind everyone, due to the spike of COVID-19 cases in the region and concerns regarding the Delta variant, this meeting of the Matthews Board of Commissioners will be conducted remotely. The mayor and commissioners will vote on each item by roll call vote, and each member will raise their hand to visually indicate their vote as well. We'll move on to agenda item number 2, the invocation or moment of reflection with Mayor Pro Tem Garner. Okay.
Good evening. I'd like to take a moment that we reflect on our duties as we serve this town, that we might take this time to find the wisdom and clarity we're seeking in our decision making.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We'll move on to agenda item number 3, the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in the pledge. With our beautiful virtual flag on the screen there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's move on to agenda item number 4. Recognize Elevation Church for contributions to remote learning program. We're going to have Corey King, our Park and Rec Director, and also Josh Wood, Katisha Mitchell, and Chris Everett from Elevation Church.
Hi, good evening. I'm Kalisha Mitchell.
Hi guys, Josh Wood.
Awesome. Yeah, so thank you, Mayor. So in summer 2020, CMS was making some of these decisions about remote learning. The town certainly recognized that there was a risk to some kids falling behind by reason of supervision or the digital divide, or a couple of reasons. And so the town did make the decision to begin a remote learning program. And Elevation Church joined in the effort to help the kids in Matthews have a productive school year, certainly in a safe and supervised environment. And at the beginning of the school year, Elevation, they made the initial commitment to funding scholarships to kids that can help parents pay for their participation in the remote learning program. Elevation certainly fulfilled that commitment and then made a second pledge to provide additional scholarship dollars to families that needed financial support. So in total, Elevation supported this program by way of $20,000 in scholarships to kids that participated in the program. And tonight, really just wanted to publicly say, thank you for the partnership and the assistance with the remote learning program that the town offered last school year.
Yeah, thank you very much. Elevation Church has always been a fantastic community partner. Kalisha, I mispronounced your name earlier. Sorry about that. Would either you or Josh like to say a few words?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, I appreciate, Corey, your leadership and Hazen as well, just making it very easy for us to come alongside you and find a way to support. I think that's the the invitation and the ability for us to come alongside and help those in a very targeted way that needed the help most. That was special. We appreciate the opportunity. That's exactly what we're here for.
Awesome. Yes, it was a great partnership.
Thank you, Josh. Ms. Mitchell, would you care to add anything?
I'll just mimic Josh's sentiments. It's definitely always good for us to be able to support and help and see what the contributions of our volunteers and our staff and as well as our members are able to do within the community. So thank you guys for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Let's move on to agenda item number 5, receive a COVID-19 update. Mr. Blodgett, you going to take care of that tonight?
Yes, sir. Chief is on taking a couple of days off, so I will step in. And you guys heard you all, the board, heard some of this last Thursday, but at the end of June, there was minimal community spread. But there has been a substantial change since then. Back in June, end of June, we were at 44 cases a day in the county. And now we're at 473. Our positivity rate has gone up to 13%. And kind of some of the interesting statistics about this latest spike is 50% of the cases are in folks from 25 to 39 years old. As I guess I'm assuming most of us heard, the Pfizer vaccine was approved today by the FDA. We did the emergency management masking mandate. I am going to recommend we put that back on the agenda for y'all, the board, to talk about a possible amendment to that. After we met, the county realized that schools was not specifically articulated, including public, private, and parochial schools. Now, we all know CMS has already gone to a masking mandate. And then this does have this kind of trickle effect. Once they change that, then they also have to revisit this public health, which is going to go into effect, proposed to go into effect on the 19th of September. So anyways, we'll talk about that, but wanted to mention that. Happy to answer any questions the best I can.
Hazen, one of the data points I asked for, and I don't know if we ever received it, or if we did, I didn't catch it. Do we have the number of deaths from COVID in zip code 28105?
I do not have that, no.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
I saw it earlier today on the DHS site, and it's 74.
That's 74 since the beginning of COVID?
Mhm.
Okay. All right, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments for the town manager regarding COVID-19? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
No, I wouldn't.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was a little late. I took my daughter to her well checkup visit today at Matthews Children's Clinic. And I've gotten a lot of emails about this. There's no spread among children, or that children don't get sick with COVID. So I asked the doctor that we saw today, and she said that that particular children's clinic is seeing, as many children as they were at the height during the winter. So I just want to keep that in mind as we're going into the school year, that children need to be just as safe as adults do.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none. Hazen, you mentioned the item to be added to the agenda. You want to kind of repeat that?
Yes, sir, Mayor, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. So staff is recommending, based on the county's revisiting of their mask mandate, that we also revisit ours. There's a couple of discussion points that we would like to lift up, and we add that as item 10B under unfinished business, discuss second amended proclamation.
Okay. All right, Charlie, we don't have to take a vote on that, do we? You're muted, sir.
Yes, sir, you do need to add that. I will take that as a vote by the board.
Okay, can I have a motion to add the mask mandate discussion?
Make that motion.
A motion from Commissioner Whitley, a second from Commissioner Bland. We'll take a roll call vote. Mayor Pro Tem Garner,
Yes.
Commissioner Bland,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Commissioner McCool,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley.
Yes.
There goes my hand. I vote yes as well, so that passes unanimously. We'll add that as item 10B, mask mandate discussion, possible change to that. All right, we're going to move on to agenda item number 7. Lori, do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
Yes, sir. We have Mr. Mark Tofano.
How do you do? My name is Mark Tofano, 259 South Trade Street, Matthews, North Carolina. I'm coming to you this evening as in the role of commander of the Hooks-Over American Legion Post 235 in Matthews. I'd like to present to you a video of the American Legion plan for the Matthews Veterans Memorial Park. And what you see, all the features in this video will be paid for through donations to the American Legion and at no cost to the town. The video, please.
Give us just one moment, please.
Not hearing any sound, I'm sorry.
Are you hearing the sound now?
No.
All right, one moment, please.
Memorial Park and the entire 142-year history of Matthews.
Did you hear that sound?
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you. I'll restart just a moment.
Welcome to the Matthews Veterans Memorial Park, the first and only Veterans Memorial Park in the entire 142-year history of Matthews. As you approach the park from Stumptown Park, you are drawn to the commemorative area, where hundreds of bricks are laid engraved with the names of men and women who have served our country and who will be remembered for years to come by the loving friends and family that placed them there in honor of their service. This is a place to sit, to reflect, and to remember, shaded by trees during the day and majestically lit by night. In addition to the commemorative bricks, the rear wall is engraved with the names of soldiers of World War I from Matthews and Mint Hill who died in battle. Overlooking all of this are the flags of each branch of service and the flag of the United States of America for which they served. Looking to the left, we see that the west entrance and additional seating for those attending both the Veterans Park and Stumptown Park. Looking to the right, we see the east entrance and also additional seating which can be used by those attending both parks. Guests entering the west entrance will be greeted by a memorial to Private Hooks and Private Orr, both of whom perished during World War I and are the namesake of the Hooks-Over American Legion Post 235 of Matthews, North Carolina. As you pass the Hooks-Over Memorial, you will approach the Memorial Garden. The Memorial Garden will be planted with perennial flowering plants as well as grasses and other colorful shrubbery. It will contain numerous plants that can be valuable pollinators as well. Passing the Memorial Garden, visitors will approach the commemorative brick area, where they can sit and absorb the richness and significance of everything that this area represents. Entering the park through the east entrance, the visitor will be brought into the area that was established by the Rotary Club of Matthews and Mint Hill some 30 years ago. This area has been enhanced with a wall that will someday soon have painted upon it a mural honoring those that have served. The mural will pay tribute to the men and women of all of the armed forces and provide a look into the conflicts over the last 100 years, The mural will be lit at night and will be seen by thousands of passing motorists every day. Passing by the mural wall, the visitor will walk through the war monuments representing the conflicts over the last 100 years. Each of these monuments will also be a time capsule storing memorabilia from each war and conflict. In addition, the future plans for the monuments include narrative plaques providing a history of that period. This area is meant to be used for the education of both young and old about these important moments in our nation's history. As we leave the park, we notice that the rear of the park has had fencing added to coordinate with the pillared fencing that is currently along the sidewalk on Trade Street. Aerial views of the Matthews Veterans Memorial Park show the balance and beauty of this unique pocket park. Thank you for visiting the Matthews Veterans Memorial Park.
Thank you. I have no further comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tufano. We'll move on to agenda item number 8, receive an update from the Matthews Committee on Education from Chair Kristen Chabin.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen so that I can show you the presentation, and then we will start momentarily.
Did I pronounce your name correctly?
If you said Kristen Chabin, then yes, you did.
Say Chabin. I got Kristen. I didn't get Chabin totally right, but I want to make sure I pronounce it correctly. Kristen Chabin, welcome.
Thank you. I'm trying to pull up my slideshow. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing this. Thank you so much for allowing time tonight for me to share the Matthews Committee on Education updates and then our next steps as well. We also should have Susanna White joining us tonight. She is our vice chair and she'll help answer any questions that you have at the end. Of course, I'm Kristen Chabin, I'm the chair of the committee. Our committee first met in April 2019, and we at this first meeting really discussed some hot topics. And this is going to be important because you'll see this. We kind of circle back around to this for our recommended next areas of focus. Those hot topics that we discussed at that first meeting: overcrowding, overcapacity of the schools, the use of trailers, the traffic patterns blocking the roads, teacher turnover, school performance, diversity, not only of the students, but of the staff as well. Safety, physical safety, of course, but not only that, the structure of the schools and the physical safety, but mental and emotional health as well. And then school relationships, really focusing on opportunity and strengths. And at that time, back in April of 2019, we really felt like our focus should be on finding all those opportunities, all those schools that really serve the Matthews family. So really putting together a school list or a school inventory, and then coming up with measurable metrics to where we could do a side-by-side snapshot or profile of those schools, really meeting these 3 goals: providing families with options for educating their children, providing families information to assist them in advocating for their child. Not every child has the same learning needs, and providing families with those guiding questions to help them determine how to even find the best educational fit for their family. So questions maybe to ask at open houses or info sessions. We really felt this connected well to our mission, promoting a strong, healthy relationship, promoting those equal opportunities, identifying and supporting individuals and organizations, really increasing those awareness of educational opportunities, again, that serve Matthews families. As you can see from our timeline, we invested a great deal of time in putting this together. And then in November of last year, 2020, we published it on the town website. And I do want to share this momentarily because it's going to be important in our next areas of focus. So this is on the Town of Matthews website under residents. This is our school resource guide. And I want to pull it up if you haven't seen it. It is a wealth of information for families. The committee is very proud of this. Along the left-hand column, it scrolls down to all the schools that serve the town of Matthews or the Matthews families. We looked at an 8-mile radius is where we stopped because it ended up being about 50 schools within even that 8-mile radius. Shows the school website you can go to for more information, who you can contact. It scrolls across to just about every piece of information you would want to know about these schools. We're very proud of this resource. However, we don't really feel that it's very user-friendly. It's really more in an Excel document template, which is really how we gathered and organized the information. And at this point, although it's a wealth of information for Matthews families, we just don't really feel quite like it's up to speed as far as being user friendly. So what we are wanting to do at this point as our recommended next steps is really have this overarching goal to build strong family, school, and community relationships through two big objectives, really reorganizing, sort of cleaning up this school resource guide to be more user-friendly and sustainable. Originally, our thoughts were to kind of update that quarterly or yearly. We really don't feel like that's the best use of our time, but really making it more sustainable, user-friendly to search and to navigate. And then our second new step, I guess, is what we're recommending, is to develop a strategy to support the town in communicating local education-related information and resources. And I kind of think of this as an example, like the Town of Matthews website has the "How do I" search tool on the top bar, right? And if you click on that, it's "How do I pay my taxes?" or "How do I get a dog license?" or "How do I request a recycling bin?" Right? Anything that you would possibly need to know. So sort of perhaps like that. You know, if you're a new family coming into town, what are all the options for my children for school? And that's where that school resource guide comes into play. Or, gosh, how do I even enroll my child in school? Or if you're already a family member with children in the school system, perhaps you're wanting to share a concern, one of those hot topic concerns. How do you do that? Maybe we could provide, you know, when those public hearings are. How do you sign up for a public hearing? You know, what do you need to do in order to speak? If someone's concerned about, you know, overcrowding and new schools being built or lack of schools being built, you know, when are the next budget meetings? So really just kind of being that liaison, being that connection, being that family advocate between families and their children, the town, and schools that serve the town and our families. So that is really sort of where we're hoping to move forward over the next year or two. And I'd love to take any comments or questions that the board has.
All right, thank you for that. Are there any comments or questions? Commissioner McCool?
I just want to say, as I'm the elected leader who sits on this board, I wanted to say I'm really proud of the work that we've been able to do to get to this point. And I'm super excited for these next steps and to see how this committee evolves. It's a really good committee. And I just wanted to say good job to them, and I'm excited for the next steps.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Miller, do you have any comments? You served on this committee for quite a long time.
I'm proud of all that they've accomplished as well. I've worked with Kristen for about 16 years, give or take. I've known her well, and I'm thrilled that she's chairing this board as of now. I really am. And Susanna as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller.
So Kristen, can you tell us a little bit more about what your immediate next steps are going to be, what you plan on working on?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So we have some fantastic IT minds on the committee. I unfortunately am not one of them, but we do have some IT minds. You know, when we first went about doing that school inventory list, we really just had it sort of in an Excel template, and we felt like it was such a wealth of information that we wanted to get it published as quickly as we could. So we went ahead and published that sort of as is. As you can see, though, it's not exactly user-friendly. We have some committee members who have sort of modeled or demoed some of their ideas for how we can clean that up. So we're really wanting to put that more into a framework where people can sort of just search it and navigate it a little bit easier. So for example, if they just had an elementary school student, you know, maybe instead of you seeing the entire document, it's just questions, right? So it's just easy to search and navigate. So, what age are you looking for? And you could put in first grade, and then only questions that attain to that first grade pop up. So really making it more searchable. And then, like I said, just trying to be, I don't know if clearinghouse is a right word. Maybe Susanna can jump in here too, but just sort of helping Matthew's families navigate, I guess, the largeness of school options around here. I've lived here 20 years, and to have 2 children in the school system, and it can still be overwhelming to me to even know, where do I go to find what I need to find? So if we could provide that extra assistance and be that family advocate, we think that would be a strength for the town. I know we asked Commissioner McCool to sort of come back with hot topics that the board hears about quite a bit, and really hoping to help address some of those as well.
Great, thank you. I had an idea. I don't know if you have thought about this. I know in speaking to Commissioner Miller and Commissioner McCool that keeping this resource guide updated has been just almost an impossible task to because things change so quickly. And my suggestion is perhaps you could send out a blast email maybe twice a year to all the schools and say, is the information on our website about your school still correct? And put the onus on them instead of somebody on the committee to maybe respond. That might be a little easier, but I don't know if you've already done that or not, but I understand that that was a frustration in talking to some of the committee members, because you release it and then it's, parts of it are not correct almost immediately because things change so often.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, once it was published, we had several schools reach out to us, either because they weren't listed and they wanted to be, or because some of their information already needed to be updated. So yeah, I think the suggestion of, twice a year or quarterly, or, whatever the committee deems adequate and is for our time in the schools to get those updates would be fantastic.
Well, we really do appreciate all you've done. You've done a great job. And I hear a lot of people, including myself, many years ago, moved to Matthews because of the schools that are here. We have some really good options for schools for our kids. So it's a great place to raise a family. So thank you for all your work. Are there any other questions or comments before we move on? Seeing none. Okay. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Susanna. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the consent agenda, item 9.
I would like to make a motion that we accept the consent agenda A through F3.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Whitley, a second by Commissioner McCool. We'll take a roll call vote. Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Yes.
Commissioner Bland.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Commissioner McCool.
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley.
Yes.
I vote yes as well. That passes unanimously. We'll move on to unfinished business. 10A, consider design for Stumptown Veterans Memorial Park. Corey King. Is Corey on the call? There he is.
All right, I'm back. Thanks again. And also, we'll also just start with a thank you to the advisory committees, both the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, Veterans Advisory Committee. They worked hard on this throughout the process, a lot of meetings, a lot of long meetings, multiple conversations, a lot of people, and certainly thank you guys for volunteering your time to assist with this project. We have been working with Stewart Engineering to develop some conceptual designs for Stumptown Park and Matthews Veterans Memorial Park, and where those edges meet. Emily and Ted are here to present the conceptual designs, and then also share what the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee and also the Veterans Advisory Committee want to bring forward to the board as a recommendation. We also have Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee Chair Howie Laviner here to talk a little bit about the process, but then also just sort of talk through the recommendation that was made by the advisory committee, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. So Howie, you're up.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Mr. Blodgett, thank you for letting me speak tonight. As you know, these designs from Stewart weren't created in a vacuum. There were public meetings held before we even got Stewart involved, which between emails and Zoom, I believe had about 100, somewhere between 160 and 180 people participating. So what the desires were of the general public were known before we started. We are going to recommend, you're going to go through concept designs A and D later, we recommend B. The important thing here is Stumptown Park, unfortunately, is a very tight, very limited space. And what we tried to do was come up with a design that would meet the needs of the veterans as well as the needs of the town, because certain events such as Matthews Alive, Beach Fest, the Symphony, and others require usage of pretty much every square inch of the existing park. The reason that I might add that the recommendation we're going to make on B was made with 3 members of the Matthews Veterans Advisory Committee in attendance, and they've been involved in this process from day one. They've sat in our meetings, we've spoken with them. They have also approved the design B that Parks and Rec Advisory is sending to you. The things that were like, just a few highlights, is it allows on the left side, there's a garden with a seating area, which we liked. There are seatings near the monuments. Also, there is a change in the configuration of the monuments. There was a feeling that right now with the monuments in a straight linear line, it really is much too reminiscent of a cemetery. And the design that we're approving puts them in a semicircular area which will have benches in front so they can be seated and viewed. There is also going to be 3 informational boards that can put up there, because the most important thing we felt about this Veterans Memorial is an educational component for folks that didn't live through it or are not aware of what happened. We had a Parks and Rec Advisory Committee that was related solely to this and opened that up to public input, as well as all of our meetings. It's been discussed. We've opened that to public input. One thing we have recommended, the Memorial Plaza, which is in the center, we have recommended the installation of removable benches. And the reason we're doing that is that that area is needed on some of our big events for vendors, bounce houses, that kind of thing. But there was also concern that the memorial, because of its nature, is probably going to attract visitors that tend to be older, some of them with disabilities. It's very important that they have as many seating spaces in that memorial as possible. Now, we know that Mr. Tufano, who come up with his own design here, is not happy with the recommendation. I might add that there are members of the Parks and Recreation staff that are not happy either, which kind of leads me to believe that maybe we've done this right. I don't know. You know, when you upset someone on both sides, maybe you hit the middle ground. We believe it's a reasonable compromise. It's the best end result. It meets the needs of the vets, but it also meets the needs of the town. I just want to add one aside from Mr. Tufano's public comments, where he is offering once again to make all these changes, including a fence, which would definitely interfere, a fence which would be on the area of the sidewalk, which would definitely interfere with usage of the park by Parks and Rec in the town. But, you know, the idea of a private group funding improvements in a public park at its face sounds great, but you create issues of perceived ownership and control that may prove problematic down the road. That's well above my pay grade, but I just wanted to express that thought with you. I understand that the folks at Stewart are going to walk you through the design, so I'm going to leave it to them since they're the professionals. But thank you for giving me a chance to address this.
Thank you, Howie. Lori, I've got a question. Is Doug Rose able to attend this meeting, or is he in the waiting room?
He is. We can have him join you in just a moment.
Yeah,
Doug had actually sent us an email where he said he wasn't going to be here, but he approved it, but I'm glad he's here.
Yeah, I'd love to hear his perspective as well.
Doug, we have given you the capability to speak. If you are there listening, if you can turn your mic on and your camera if you have one.
I am here and I'll turn on my camera in a minute. So yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, we can hear you, but apparently you're in a closet because it's like total darkness there.
I was in a t-shirt. Let me put on something appropriate.
Maybe he was in his closet. Well, if we want to, we can, there you go. All right.
Okay, I'm not sure if you're expecting comments from me right now. Is that what it is?
Well, we heard from the chair of Park and Rec. I think it's appropriate to hear from the chair of MBEC as well.
Great.
Regarding, and then we'll see the presentation on what the recommendation is.
Perfect. We have been in unison with the Parks and Recs the entire time, step by step, to ensure that our voices were heard, along with the other key stakeholders. I've met with Mark Tofano, and he has presented the same video to our MBEC committee the last time around. We observed that. What we did end up doing, we took a vote on the Parks and Recs a motion. We had a not a unanimous decision, but we had a majority decision. We had 5-4, 2 abstained or no votes, and 2 for B with the wall. So again, there was some not contention, but some differences of opinion within the MBEC committee. But overall, we did like the conception of concept B with a removable bench, and look forward to you guys hopefully approving it tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Yes, we're going on to Ms. Blackwell, Corey.
Yes, I believe Emily is going to be driving this vehicle.
Okay.
Evening. Thank you for having us, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I will be sharing my screen and presenting our 3 primary options, and Ted Duncan, who provided the presentation to the committees, will also be kind of tag teaming with me. Okay, if I can do full screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Do you see yourselves over here, or do you see just my picture?
It's the gallery.
You see this?
I
Okay.
think it depends on how you have your,
Yeah,
how each
I'll
of
try
us
to
have our
minimize
screen
that.
configured. Yeah.
Okay.
it's adjustable.
Okay. So this is option A. Oops, don't click. This is option A that when presented to the committees was not chosen to move forward. There was really, I think the contention, Ted, if you can correct me on this one, was that this was the only option where we, for the most part, left the existing memorial plaques in their current location. This layout did expand the existing center plaza into this oval that you see here, and provided a gathering space to the left of it with a seat wall. Those were kind of the main features of this that differed from the other options. All the options you will see throughout this presentation have entry columns on both sides, entry from both sides of the walkway, with about 5-foot tall columns, kind of helping you feel like you have entered this space. That was one of the things we heard consistently from both groups, to make sure that this space really feels like its own while being integrated into Stumptown as a whole. So that was one of the things we wanted to do to make sure this area was set off in its own special space. And so this is the only image you will see of option A, as it was not chosen to be carried forward. Ted, was there anything you wanted to add from the comment section on this?
Let's go to option B, and I'll point out the elements that are consistent in every scheme, because there's a kit of parts that kind of make up the Matthews Veteran Memorial Park. Some of them are the elements that the Rotary Plaza, the flagpole, the wall that will then in the future will hold the mural. The conflict monuments, which in this scheme are organized into a semicircle with a split walk and a bench dedicated to that area. The commemorative area, as Mark pointed out, with the lower wall with the veterans' names that served in World War I, the flag wall behind that. All of these elements are consistent. And then the garden areas around the commemorative, the conflict theaters, and gardens to the left that provide not only color and some beauty in the park, but also behind them, evergreen buffering back toward the property line. And at the property line, we were requested at the last meeting that on every scheme that a fencing element should be included just to control traffic migration from the adjacent parking area. Several people commented on seeing people kind of tromping through the memorial area and not respecting kind of the perimeters of the park. I will say as well that all of the schemes, even though they're experienced, sort of designed by the sidewalk path to be a linear experience, they're not sequential. It doesn't matter whether you enter on the left or the right, and you can enter from the lawn area of the park. It's a collection of rooms and experiences on each one that have subtle differences in the way the pieces are arranged. Emily, why don't we go ahead and go to the perspectives, and we'll kind of walk through this model. And so this starts on the right-hand side, coming through the column gateway. You can see the existing flagpole, seat wall, and future mural location. And as we move to the left, you're into the conflict monuments that have been relocated. They're set back in a scented garden. There's a small shade tree, a planting area. The path is split, and there's a curved bench that allows people to sit and reflect in that area. And you'll notice along the concrete sidewalk, there's a new wider band that was requested. It's a brick band intended to honor not veterans, but companies and individuals who have contributed to the creation and the sustainment of the Matthews Veterans Memorial Park in its earlier stages and in the future. So this would more or less be a donor's walk, an edge that had the donor's walk with donors recognized. And as we move further left into the commemorative area, there was a lot of discussion initially in this scheme. There was a brick wall in the place where you now see a wooden bench. It was agreed the seating was desired, a seating that could be focused in toward commemorative area, as well as could be used to look out into the lawn area. But there was a strong desire to have those benches be able to be relocated, to be moved. So when the larger special events that needed all of the foreground area, when those events are coming on, the benches could be moved and that space could be better utilized and shared between Stumptown Park and Matthews Veterans Memorial Park. This also includes in the next area past the commemorative area, the inclusion of rather large but significant educational panels that could have imagery, text, photos screened on. There's a lot of different information that can be included there, some educational, some honoring particular veterans or veterans groups or elements to be identified by the committee and by the town. In all of these schemes, as you come through, there's a sitting, if you can back up just one for a second, Emily. Well, it's a little hidden by the trees, but we have a sitting area here on the left, and then the other pair of gateway columns. There is an existing playground in this kind of mulched area, and that playground remains as is. It does not get relocated. It does not get encroached upon. The sidewalks have been pushed away and outside of that, so there's no conflict with the play area. But we did start manipulating this design to allow for the wooden benches that are in the commemorative area to be picked up, and rather than have to be hauled off and stored, there's room for them to be remounted over on the left beside the one existing bench in the center. So there's room there, so just move them, about 70 or 80 feet, secure them down, and they can stay in that location for the time needed. No need to haul them off or store them, or it be a larger type of effort. And again, this, as Doug has said, and as Howie have said, a lot of people had input on this, and we're really kind of pushing for a way to find a solution that we could work across the desires of all people involved. So that's the walkthrough on Scheme B, which, as Howie said, as Doug supported, has been the supported alternative by the committees. We'll go ahead and show you the other two site plans.
Flipping back to, sorry for interrupting today. I was flipping back to the plan view. You can see a little bit better that bench relocation space. So you can see the one bench that is permanent, and then kind of an outline adjacent to it for where the two benches on the plaza would be relocated, so that it looks, does not look like anything is missing when there's just one bench here. It's just a larger plaza adjacent to it. And then when those benches are placed over next to it, they look like they were supposed to be there, and no one, would miss them over here. So if you've got to get ready for an event early, or it takes a little while to get back over there and move them after an event, they're not far away, like Ted said, and they don't look out of place. They're not just sitting off in the woods or something.
Let's go to C. More slide.
Yeah. There's kind of the backed up overall view of that one. Okay.
Here on Scheme C, entering from the opposite side, you can see the playground location, a small plaza for benches looking toward the memorial and toward the park, the poppy field garden that is an element in all schemes. But this scheme is rather significant in that it includes a retaining wall in the plan, where the plaza area is expanded and pushed back into the park area. Benches are located along that wall, facing out into Stumptown Park across the Veterans Memorial Park. There is an expanded central commemorative area at the Memorial Plaza. The conflict monuments have been located similarly in a semicircular fashion, a little more articulation in the paving patterns here. But again, an opportunity to have a split path and have a space not along the sidewalk that those elements could be observed in. Then the path coming around past the existing flagpole and bench, and then exiting back through the entry column sequence on the right. Like all the schemes, there is the brick edge for recognizing donors and that crisp kind of definition on the ground plane of the limits and the division between the Veterans Memorial Park and Stumptown Park. Let's take the walk through, Emily. So again, entering with the 5-foot columns on the left, a small plaza area with 2 benches, the poppy garden. You can see the retaining wall and the larger plaza area with seating that is focused out towards Stumptown Park. Here we're looking a little more back into the commemorative area beyond. Here's the expanded central commemorative area of the Memorial Plaza with the existing rotary wall and flag wall beyond. Then we're into the semicircle of the conflict monuments and the walks that give access to that. Then we still have the remaining elements of the future mural wall, the brick seat bench, the flagpole, the 2 existing benches and sculpture in the Rotary Plaza. And then the columned exit over to the right. And here again, it's kind of a pulled back view. Again, gardens, the containment fence along the backside of the property, all very consistent in all schemes. And then we'll go to D. And D was another more linear scheme, such as A, and quite frankly, suffered pretty much the same fate as the A design, in that it was very linear. It has a formality to it. The central piece is balanced and symmetrical, with the conflict monuments being split onto each side. It's heavily weighted toward the center of the development of the Memorial Park, and sort of identifies that core area rather separately from the Rotary Flag Plaza and then the gardens to the left. Again, comments on this one were very much that it was overly formal. It seemed sort of rigid and funerary, that it was just organized more like a cemetery than a living memorial for the town's veterans. We can do the walkthrough on that one. Again, this is entering on the right-hand side, past existing planting and trees, heading toward the Rotary Flag Plaza on the right. The same donor brick edging, benches that are in the Memorial Park, but facing out to Stumptown Park. The conflict monuments, 3 on this side, 3 on the other side, with gardens beyond. The commemorative area, the Memorial Plaza, expanded for future growth and recognition of veterans. Then on the other side, the 3 additional conflict monuments with their educational plaques and informative plaques, I think as Mark mentioned in his video. Another bench, the poppy gardens and the perennial gardens with the evergreen screening between the parking lot and both the Veterans Memorials Park and Stumptown Park. The exit with the paired columns on the left. I think we have an overall view of this one as well. Yeah. Do you want to head back to B, Emily, since it was the preferred alternative? And Corey, if it's appropriate, either if you want to have comments or if you want to entertain any questions specifically about B or any of the options, but B, since it was sent forward for recommendation by the advisory committees.
Yeah, it sounds like a good opportunity to get some comments and answer any questions that the board has.
I do have a comment, something that's kind of driving me crazy on all of them. Why are the entrances or entrance/exit not symmetrical? Why aren't the pillars in the same location across on both of them? Just seems kind of cockeyed the way it is.
I guess there's a couple of reasons. First off, we have some different topography on the two sides. You have kind of the element of the park on the left-hand side, the playground element, that we've pulled back from a little bit. And then the entry columns on the right, where you enter at that point, then the grade starts to climb up as you enter in. I'm sure you could make an adjustment to have them balanced off across the site. These are master plan concepts. So certainly as you go further into design and start making your selected choice a reality with funding in the future, that I think everyone would imagine there would be tweaks and detailing to further refine and enhance the project.
Another question I have is, where is the signage that designates this as the Matthews Veterans Memorial Park? Is it going to be on the pillars, or where is it?
We would envision plaques on the pillars. There are no schemes that have, well, bless you.
Thank you.
That have vertical elements that we would apply a larger name opportunity to.
And one final question. I envisioned, I'm not against the idea of the removable benches, and I think it's kind of ingenious to have them where you can move them on site to another location. But I always thought there would be maybe more of a vertical element across, maybe more benches, maybe one on either side of the two that are there. Was that ever considered?
I don't think we got into, we did have a scheme that had, again, it was not removable bench, it was a larger wall that had the commemorative area, and then it had a pair of benches flanking each side of that. So it had more seating, which is certainly an option. I think that we could use the same strategy and have other locations adjacent in the park that those benches could be temporarily located and be out of the way for larger festival events, and then placed back in again for the Veterans Memorial Park visitors.
Okay, are there other questions? Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. I have a question about what I think was referred to as storyboards on the left side of the center.
Yes, the educational plaques.
Yeah. What are those made of, or what type of material would be up there?
Well, we haven't gotten down into pinning that down. I think one of the best opportunities is probably some of the tempered glass that you can screen images and photos and text onto. You may have seen it there's some really thoughtful and meaningful bus shelters that use that in historic areas. And insert panels in buildings sometimes that screening process allows a variety of images to be addressed and integrated and kind of balanced out. So it would leave a lot of flexibility for the groups that are leading the final design of the project to determine what exactly would be on there. I'm sure that's probably almost a sub-project in itself.
Thank you.
See on the left side here, we've shown a couple of examples of what that kind of looks like in real life.
Okay.
I'm trying to get it to zoom in. I think I've got too many programs up for you guys. It's not cooperating real fast, but I'm kind of get an idea.
Thank you.
Commissioner Urban, you had a
I appreciate all your efforts, Ted and Emily. My only big concern, well, not necessarily a big concern, is more design development along the northern edge, where you're referencing a fence and maybe some shrubbery along there. Twofold. I think there needs to be fairly impermeable to some people's points about penetrating that line, but we also have to remember several other things. That there will be another building there someday. Odds are, from what I understand, that'll be the rear of a building And so that's going to have a huge visual impact looking through the memorial. So you're going to really have to come up with something fairly opaque that acts as a very nice neutral background for the memorial. And then the second, those trees being that high and that visual, you're looking right underneath of them. So that's item number one. Item number two is you're going to need some type of greenery or barrier also, because the wall of whatever that structure is for purposes of the event park is going to act as a sounding board for noise. And so you're probably, and maybe Corey can talk to this right now because it's different now, is that you'll probably get reverb off of that structure. So I'm thinking through your design development beyond the master plan that the rear along there needs to be really thought out as to both work from a visual standpoint and a noise standpoint.
And John, for the walls that you're, and thank you for the comments, the wall you're concerned about, are you talking about the existing flag wall or the educational plaques?
The northern property line, the line from left to right on the northern side bounding.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. That
against
line
the parking lot, right?
Exactly.
I'll take that. It's intended to be an aluminum picket fence, kind of similar to what is between the existing brick columns along Trade Street. So it's more to be a barrier. It's not going to be a wall per se. So I don't know that we'll have any issue with sound more than you're already having potentially with the existing wall.
Well, I
so,
guess, but
there will be
point is
vegetation between.
It's a picket fence though, and it's transparent. So my guess is the infamous dumpster pad is going to be on the back of the building. There's going to be cars parked back there. So again, you want to, in my opinion, you want to disconnect those visuals from the visuals that you're going to be seeing when you're sitting there or walking through the memorial park. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we agree, John. There's a lot of new planting back there that is not extremely mature, but it's probably going to call for the addition of a few larger, more significant plants, intermediate heights that would be full to ground.
Right.
They could help bridge that kind of viewable corridor that you're addressing there.
Right. Yeah. And,
Yes.
and right now, all your concepts are kind of vague on what's going along that edge, but I just pointed it out there. If we get it on record, we need to emphasize that.
Yeah, and that's correct. They're just kind of laid in there because we do have a lot of existing material in there that's not been cataloged, not been located, that would be part of the next phase of this process about what could be either left in place, relocated, or located somewhere else within the park as that screening evergreen landscaping is being applied.
Thank you, Ted.
Do we know the comparative cost of each option?
We do. Emily's going to run through that, I guess, probably as soon as somebody asks the question. So thank you.
On to get the design questions.
Now, once you get halfway through the design, everybody's asking how much it costs. We all know that.
Fully prepared. So we do have costs here. We work with Harris Cost. They are professional construction cost consultants that we work with regularly or in the market, getting as up to date construction costing and material costing as humanly possible in this crazy market. We did have them take a look at all three of these schemes that were carried forward. Concept B cost estimate is just over 190,000. Concept C is 219. The jump between these two is primarily due to the additional paving in this area west of the central space and the seat wall behind it. And then concept D was almost 179,000. It is a little bit under the other two due to it having the least amount of paving. It doesn't have the additional semicircle here, and it does not have the larger plaza on this side or over in the corner. So it has the least amount of paving and therefore the least amount of site work. These cost estimates are pretty all-inclusive of the construction costs. There with demolition, all the site work, the landscaping, paving, walls, site furnishings, we've included some lighting relocations because there are lights on the existing conflict monuments that would need to be relocated as those are relocated, as well as your overhead contractor costs. It does also include a 20% contingency, so that as you've as you go through the process and refine that during design, and as you get into construction, you want to have a contingency there so that you cover anything that has not been detailed out at this point, or things that would be unknown in the field. What this does not include is the detailed design and engineering costs and any permitting fees. We would need to meet with the permitting agency and reviewers to see what actually would need to be permitted. We know we would be under any thresholds for erosion control through the state, but we may need to look at the thresholds. We may or may not be tripping for permitting the additional impervious area, as well as if a scheme was selected with a wall.
Emily, this is Hazen, the town manager. What's the rule of thumb for a design and engineering cost of a $200,000 project? You can give me percent.
Yeah, usually anywhere between 8 and 10% is kind of a good rule.
And the other wild card that kind of drives that up is survey, which was executed for this section of the park as part of this project. Again, we don't have the plant locations on all the garden areas, but we do have the AutoCAD engineered survey.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yeah, why we don't have a price for concept A?
During the coordination with the two committees, that one was not very desired by either committee, so it was not selected as one of the three to move forward.
Okay.
So that's why you didn't see any illustrative drawings of that one nor cost estimating.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
On concept B, is the sidewalk just remaining the same with the addition of a brick outline to make it wider?
It would be new sidewalk. It's slightly shifted and relocated. It's slightly wider. We would regrade sections of it to make sure we had accessibility. It would be very hard to kind of keep the existing sidewalk in its current configurations and make it work. So that's a redo from entry gateway and actually even a little bit beyond on the left-hand side.
Okay.
Yeah, you can kind of see that in the illustratives, basically where you see where we've overlaid it on the aerials, where that white sidewalk turns to gray in our drawings. That's about where we would expect the new concrete to be located.
Right, and looking at it with the aerial view beside it, it looks like it's about the same width. And I guess we're looking at this just as more of a concept point of view rather than, fine tuning the details. But I would imagine a wider sidewalk would be more appropriate, considering wheelchairs and caregivers would be.
Yeah, if we go to the scheme, Emily, you can zoom into the gateway, and at the transition of the columns, we actually kind of widened the sidewalk out a bit with the brick edge, and then it's picked up, I don't know, another 6 or 8 inches, but it's not adding like 4 feet to it, right? It's going from about, say, 5 and 6 feet to 7 and 8 feet in most places. And then it is widened out as you head toward as you approach to the commemorative area. And then the commemorative area plaza is expanded pretty significantly.
My next question is about the sort of arc in the grass that says seating area. Is that just for notational purposes?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of events that are held at the Memorial Plaza, and people bring seats, or you could set white lawn chairs for those larger events, for the significant holidays, et cetera. That was just kind of representing a seating area of about 200 people.
Oh, okay.
That's probably a little tighter than soccer chair seating, right? Soccer chair seating might be 120.
My third comment is that it would be nice to see a few more benches along the perimeter. And I think that's especially creative of a solution that they can be moved to other parts of the design. A few more would make it more useful when events aren't ongoing.
Right. Emily, can you go to scheme B, please?
That one does have the most benches of the.
Yeah, but I think it's really clear what we're hearing as far as if you have this concept of you don't have to really haul them off, you just have to make a pad somewhere else that you can take them to, then why not kind of expand on that idea and that opportunity? Sure.
And I do love the informational boards. I think that adds a component that's missing currently. I think that's a great solution.
Thank you. And again, we worked with the advisory committees, Park and Rec and the veterans, and a lot of these ideas, and that's why you see a lot of similarities of so many of the ideas in here, is that people were distilling down what they thought was important, what they thought was essential, and we really tried to stick with that with a few options.
I know we're not getting really deep into the design weeds, but I would hope that the donor recognition would be very understated and not overwhelm the, we don't want to make this the Coca-Cola memorial or whatever. And, the stars of this memorial are the people whose names are engraved on the wall and on the bricks. And I would hope that, while we want to recognize all of our donors, we want to make that not too over the top so that it's takes away from the memorial.
Well, and Mr. Mayor, I think your comments reflect a lot of the thoughtfulness of the veterans that participated in the design, and they were saying that element needed to be separate. It's rather minor. It's on the edge, but they really did want to show their appreciation for the groups that had helped them or have a way to do that. So I think what you're saying is in line with what they've said. Now we just need to find out what the truly best way to make that become a reality.
If I could also add, I guess jumping back on one question that Mayor Pro Tem Garner had, whatever concept is approved by the board, we would need to bring a complete project to the board, to establish a budget. And that meaning there's some other sidewalk, slope concerns, issues that we would likely address as part of this overall project.
If I may speak, I think you guys, all of you, have done an excellent job with a ton of input and really coming up with a solution that fits the desires of a whole lot of different viewpoints. So I appreciate that from the advisory committees, from the engineers, from the Parks and Rec department, and all of town staff.
There's one thing I would like to add, just kind of as you're kind of closing your thoughts, is that one of the beautiful things about doing work on a campus or for a municipality, for a city and a community in a park, is that it tends to live there, if not forever, for a long, long time. And I know there are plans and thoughts about Matthews Alive maybe outgrowing this or expanding into other places that might relieve some of the pressure at this particular junction. I know there are plans that have been evaluated for the expansion and kind of redesign of Stumptown Park itself and how to make it perform better as a festival park that could relieve kind of this kind of push of conflict that we've all been experiencing and dealing with and trying to resolve in the best design elements that we can. So I do believe that 10 or 15 years down the road, or it could be 5, that as there's funding and opportunity, that you could revisit the landscape and the way the south edge relates to the rest of the park once those other elements kind of transition. I know that's a long view, but I don't think the design in a great park is ever over. And I think there are opportunities to have a lot of that higher definition in a very thoughtful way that certainly Mark has expressed very consistently, very politely, and we've tried to honor and respect and respond to those requests in the most balanced way we could. But I don't think even once you do this project 2-3 years from now, 5 years from now, there's still an opportunity to come back and make it better and better as the other context changes. So I'd keep this one to be a living memorial in your minds, if you would.
I have a question for maybe Corey or Hazen. If we vote on one of these options, or say option B tonight, we've heard some suggestions for fine tuning. How tightly are our hands bound to being this design? I mean, I certainly have a desire for that symmetry. I don't know, maybe one of not, maybe everyone doesn't share that opinion, but we've heard a couple folks ask for additional benching or vertical elements along that edge. What exactly are we voting on? Are we saying this is what it's going to look like? This is illustrative and we're locked in, or we're going to be able to, how much can we tweak it?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it would be just as Ted mentioned, it's a living document. Any decision tonight just gives staff direction, I guess which way to move. But of course, when we get into true design, those very specific details will be drawn out.
Commissioner Urban.
I would suggest that Ted's going to go into a design development role. That will really begin narrowing down the focus of what's going on here. Maybe what Corey does and Ted does is bring back the design development documents to the board of the selected concept, which will give you a little bit more, for your engineering standpoint, more bells and whistles and dotting I's and crossing T's to your comfort level. And then they would complete the working drawings, but most of the detail would be done for you to realize what the vision is going to be.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
This one is actually probably for Hazen, or maybe CJ, but I would like to see some of those veteran parking spaces reserved along Trade Street near the entrance to this.
Good idea.
Yeah, we could certainly work on that.
Commissioner Urban.
Hearing it being very, very quiet, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we recommend approval for staff to move forward to design elements of the concept B with the changes, including the removal of the sitting wall, substituted with benches. I would add to the bench conversation to Renee's comment about adding some additional removable seating elsewhere. That could be part of the design development. And number two, the inclusion of the development of the barrier on the northern edge of the park and the adjacent gravel lot.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Urban, a second from Commissioner Whitley. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
I vote yes. That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank
We
you.
were looking forward to speaking to you in person. But this is a great result. And so thank you.
Thank you, dear.
All right.
Great time, Mayor.
We'll move on to item 10B, a discussion about possibly amending our mask mandate. Hazen, you want to take this?
Yes, sir. I'll do my best. And Charlie, feel free to clarify where we're needed. So the board met Thursday night, had an hour-long discussion, good discussion, ultimately voted 5-2 to implement the mask mandate. Probably on, I don't know, Friday. I know I got emails on Sunday from the county manager. They realized they had left out schools. Now, CMS had already voted to go with masking, but there's private schools, there's Catholic parochial schools. So the county went back in and under this Emergency Management Act, amended the language to include schools. So once they do that, it kind of has a triggering effect, because everything you all approved said, okay, it's going to go until the end of the month, and then the county's health rules are going to kick in. Well, when they changed their Emergency Management Act wording, that also changes the countywide health department act. So now the county's act, this public health mandate, which is going to be countywide, goes into effect September 19th. So there's two things for y'all to consider in this, and we don't have anything to do with that. That's all county. So what we have before us, or the board has before them, is the North Carolina Emergency Management Act. And there's two elements. One, to extend it to September 20th, so you don't have a lag in what the county's going to do when it goes into effect. That's one discussion, and we would strongly recommend that. And then the second one is the schools. What if you did approve the language related to school masking, public, private, and parochial, you would be consistent with what Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, and I assume Davidson will do tomorrow night, and that will last until September 20th. So I'm happy to answer any questions related on the setup, and then Lori, if we can go to the actual document, we can show the two areas to be changed. And Charlie, is there anything you want to clarify?
Just a little bit. The part adding the schools also clarifies what public places also include. That would include private clubs. It also would include residential facilities, their open areas, their common areas, like, for instance, an independent living that has a large lobby area, that they would be covered with that also. So it's more than just the schools, but it's just a clarification on what the businesses are that would be included.
So whoever's driving, can you pull up this proclamation?
Yep, give us just one moment. Jay, do you have that?
Yeah, give me just 1 minute here. Word was trying to convert it, so I have to do a preview here if that works. Can you all see that?
Yeah, that's good.
I guess what I would say up to the board is normally we bring documents to the board that are in better condition. This has come out about so quickly, and I know, Charlie, you've not had the clerical help you normally have, but if you want to scroll on down to, I don't know what page it is, it's blue, you'll see the blue.
It's B1 is the addition.
Oh, there it is, right there. Okay, my copy shows. All right, so that's what Charlie talks about. Mary, do you want me to read it, or can the board read it themselves? But Charlie pointed out the changes.
Right. I would like to just make a comment before we go any further. The mask mandate that we adopted on Thursday says face coverings are required in indoor public places. The undersigned enacts the following requirement for people in public places and further enacts these restrictions on the operation of offices, business establishments, and other places where people meet or congregate. And in my mind, that includes schools. I have several concerns about this. One concern is delving into telling a parochial or religious school how to conduct their business. I'm not sure, maybe Charlie can comment on this, but I'm not sure that we have the authority to do that, or if we do, I'm not sure. I thought generally we were unable to tell religious entities what to do with regards to that. But at the bottom line is, I think our current mandate is sufficient. I don't support adding all this other stuff. I mean, I made the comment somewhat sarcastically. This weekend, I was talking to the assistant town manager and town manager, and I said, is somebody going to say, hey, 7-Elevens aren't included in this? Why don't we put 7-Elevens in here to make sure that we say that this applies to 7-Elevens? I mean, the current verbiage clearly signals our intent. And this is a very hot topic button. I'm sure everybody knows that voted for the mask mandate. It's a very controversial. I don't know if this adds a whole lot. I would support changing the date, amending our date to cover the entire gap, but I don't support adding additional language that adds more things where masks will be mandated. So CMS has their own mandate also. So this would seem redundant to say, yeah, you know, to rubber stamp what CMS has already said. Most other private schools that I'm aware of, with possibly one exception, are already mandating masks. So I don't know this adds a whole lot, and probably just creates a lot more controversy and ill tempers. So I would not be in favor of changing to this language, and I welcome anybody else's comment.
I agree.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
I mean, the enforcement would be the same, though. It would be up to the business owner or the church to press charges or to call for enforcement.
That's correct.
And Charlie, to be clear, there's no unintended consequence if we tell a Carmel Christian, for instance, hey, you have to wear masks. Is that within our authority to do that?
Well, the question could only be answered if we knew for a fact that the operation of a school is not a part, even though it's maybe run by the church, it's not a part of the church ministry in the sense that the church service is. So is that a violation of the standard on the separation of church and state? There are other illustrations such as ad valorem taxes, where if it's a business of the church but not the church itself, they're taxable. They're not tax exempt on that operation. However, I don't have an answer for you if the church includes the operation of its school. But I can see arguments both ways, and I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I would be against doing this for that reason only, because I don't think that the taxpayers of Matthews should spend one dime in court defending an action like this. It's my opinion. Other comments, you know, we made this, the comment was made, we made this together as a board, so I'd really like to hear the board's opinion so we can. Commissioner Whitley.
I noticed the date change to the 20th. Hazen, was that done because of the booster shot that's going to come available on the 20th of September as well? You know?
No, sir, because it came about because there's two different proclamations before y'all. One of them is you're dealing with this, which is going to stop. It's going to end as soon as the counties, under their health department authority, that goes into effect on the 19th. So ours ends on the 20th. That's why we ended ours. That's why you're seeing the 20th, because the counties is going to kick in on the 19th.
Okay. So pretty much what I'm hearing is that we just, more important than anything else, and I was listening at the mayor of his reading of what we made the proclamation, pretty much covers every establishment, but the date, if we move it to the 20th, we will then be covered with the county as well too. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, sir.
That's correct.
That's
okay,
what I would advocate.
Mayor, I just speak to religious. Now I know my daycare school. Now I am a nonprofit, but at the same time, I follow the guidelines of CDC. If they say, and certainly a part of daycares and schools are included in the CDC findings, but we follow the findings, and all of us have been masked, our whole staff and visitors and parents as they come in are masked. And I don't have no problem with that, and they don't have a problem. Some of the parents do, but we don't let them in the building. They just can come to the outside. I mean, that's just the bottom line. That's CDC guy. We don't let nobody in the building but teachers and kids.
Mr. Bland.
I generally agree with what you're saying, Mayor. I think that we've made our intent very clear. The problem is there's some people that aren't going to follow what the law is. There's law-abiding citizens and there's non-law-abiding citizens. I mean, I don't know what else to say. If people are determined not to follow what I think the majority of the scientific community, and I think the vast majority of the people in the country think is the safe, why not take the safe measure as opposed to taking a risk? But at the same time, why poke the bear any further than we've already poked it? So, I think we've made our intentions clear. We hope people will exercise good judgment, make sound decisions, protect people around them in addition to themselves. But, I'll go along with what you're saying. Let's close the gap on the dates on the stuff like that. But I think we've made our intentions very clear. And I think the law is clear, and if people choose to not follow it, then that's their problem, I suppose.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I made the comment earlier. I mean, we've seen what happened at Union Academy, so I can't imagine that a headmaster or someone that's in charge of a school would not only make the decision, let's not wear masks so we can, have the same results. I mean, I think that would be really foolhardy. We've got plenty of examples of what happens when they don't follow the procedure, but I think you used a good analogy. Why poke the bear further? I mean, we've made our intent very clear. We're saying, hey, you should wear masks. I was out and about in Matthews this weekend. I was at Costco. Probably 99% of the folks at Costco are wearing masks. I went to other, retailers and in some stores, maybe 60% are wearing masks. So it just depends. You're right. There are folks that aren't going to wear masks. They're just not going to do it. So, to each his own, I guess. Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
I'm sort of working this out in my head, but I think, as it is, if we named parochial schools, there's a religious exemption written into it anyway, right? So it seems like a church-based school was going to use that religious exemption, whether we add it or not. So I feel like maybe it's kind of creating more of a burden than it's worth. And I do think people who aren't going to wear masks just aren't going to wear masks as long as it's on the business owner to file a complaint. It's people are going to push boundaries as much as they can. I do, and also I was wondering if it was possible, could the town send letters to school administration, sort of just reiterating what the mask mandate is, because we do have churches that have unaffiliated schools within their walls. So maybe it would make it clear for some of those schools, and not say, and just not make any sort of statement along with it, but here's the mask mandate we passed.
Hazen, I think another issue that came up that we've discussed is Maureen is getting calls from parents saying, hey, my child goes to XYZ school. Do they have to wear a mask? Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think it's what's interesting to me is I hear the board's discussion kind of on a high level. And of course, we deal with the nuts and bolts, and we already got a mom that's asked a question. And I said, Maureen, let's hold off giving her an answer until we talk to the board tonight. And being an ex-planner, I do remember interpreting zoning ordinances. And my view on this is I do know there's language in the old one that y'all do have. It says any indoor establishment. So somebody can say, well, that's schools, right? However, when we're given an opportunity, this is how I would interpret Charlie, when we're given an opportunity to specifically lay out schools, specific, no, there's no wiggle room, we're balking on them. And then there's nothing wrong with that. It's the board's decision. But I would be uncomfortable. I would be uncomfortable saying whoever this person is about the school she's asking about, like, we have a mask mandate for your school because we don't have that language that other folks are doing. I could say indoor places or something like that, but I'm not going to step out there based on what the board doesn't do and say, yes, you have to put on a mask.
Well, my response would be, is your school in an indoor place?
Well,
do you have school outdoors or do you have it indoors? If it's indoors, then our mandate applies to them.
Why don't we just add the schools when we have a chance right now to add schools? Let's just add schools and clear it up.
Why don't we add, nurseries and like where you buy plants and bowling alleys? I mean, why don't we list every? I don't think it's necessary.
Well, I'm not arguing that, but the county has set a precedent, and I think and I'll have a conversation with Charlie. Whatever y'all do, we'll have a conversation with Charlie to say how should we interpret this language, and we'll follow his legal advice. I just want to illustrate to the board, when you generalize and then nuts and bolts, it can be two different things.
I wasn't trying to be facetious, but I think you could just beat this to death ad nauseum, adding every single indoor place that there is and say, including this, and this. And I think our intent is well known. And I also, because CMS already has a mandate, it seems redundant. Commissioner Whitley.
That's what I was gonna say. CMS has a mandate that everybody wear a mask on the bus and in the school, everybody, kids and teachers. So, I mean, I think what we are trying to do is to fill the gap, but the mandate is already there to Charlotte-Mecklenburg.
Right. And that's, for me, at least from an enforcement standpoint, that's not even an issue, because you're exactly right, Commissioner.
I'd like to make a motion. If I'm
Before you do that, Commissioner Bland, do you have a comment?
I was just going to say very quickly that I think the vast majority of schools, churches, all the folks are generally trying to do, what is the town and the government is trying, and the state, county governments are trying to encourage them to do. There's always a few people who are going to not go along. And I think those are the people that we've got to deal with. And if they're willing to risk their lives and other people's lives, then I guess until the federal government or the state government or maybe the county government does something, I think that's about all that we can do. But that's just my opinion.
Mr. Whitley.
Yeah, a couple things before I make this motion. Today, Pfizer had fully vaccinated their vaccine for permanent. And so hopefully that would give an incentive to those who wanted to see the final result get tested. I know that Novant and Atrium is going to mandate all of their employees come October. And just, I'm a little bit saddened tonight. I have one of my former members. Her dad was one of my associate pastors down in Florence, South Carolina, but she's a nurse at Novant, and got sick yesterday. Had a real bad headache, and couldn't breathe. She's 38 years old, and she went in the hospital yesterday, and she died this morning. That quick. She was planning on getting her shot this coming Thursday. And that's, when I hear that, and I know all of y'all got people that this, I'm hearing a lot of young people that's dying now. That's really hurting my heart, but I've done my part in my congregation to tell my young people now to get a shot. Don't wait. My son-in-law caught the virus back early in July. He went in the hospital and one step from being on the ventilator. Him and his cousin both was at a family reunion back in June. They both caught COVID. His cousin died, 42 years old. This is just killing these young people. So I think what we have done has put in place, and like Dave said, some people just not gonna wear it. No, but we just pray that most of them will. With that being said, I would just like to make a motion that we update our amendment to move to the date to cover up to September the 20th with that language showing that.
Quick question for Charlie. We discussed this earlier. Would it be appropriate for us to say that our mandate lasts until the counties goes into effect and not put a date, or do we have to put a date?
Well, you could do that, but I'm understanding that it should be in effect by the 19th of September. But you
That's
could
correct.
say,
That is correct. I got that from the county manager.
I will not be surprised if they amend this again. Would not surprise me. So, okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Whitley to extend it to September 20th. We have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Whitley, second by Mayor Pro Tem Garner. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
No.
Commissioner Whitley,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner McCool,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So that passes 6-1 with Commissioner Urban standing in opposition. Thank you. Let's go on to new business. Item 11A, consider public art mural. Melissa Johnson.
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Commissioners, and town staff. Thank you all for your time this evening. I will preface this. Let me know if I get to sound a little laggy. My Wi-Fi out here in the country is
Melissa, we can't hear you right now. You might want to turn off your video and try again.
No, she was on mute.
Yep.
Nope,
Yeah.
sorry.
Thank you.
There you go.
Right. Did you hear anything that I?
You said I might be laggy, and then you went silent.
All right, perfect. Okay, that could have just been user error. Awesome. All right, so I am presenting 2 renderings for a proposed mural for the patio wall outside of the Loyalist Market. And this is the brick wall that faces North Trade Street. It will be painted on 2 outer sections, which are just under 5.5 feet in height and just over 30.5 feet in length. And that is total over the 2 sections. That's why you see that little line in both of the renderings. Chris, the owner of the Loyalist Market, with the support of the building owner, approached their department about adding this mural to the patio wall. Their ideas and a selected artist were submitted for evaluation in lieu of a call for artists. The artist selected is Osiris Rain, who is a well-known muralist in Charlotte and who has extensive experience in creating large-scale murals worldwide. The main ideas behind this mural and hiring this artist were discussed and approved at the June advisory committee meeting. And these ideas that were discussed included to link the past with the present, Stumptown's history, Seaboard Railroad, farmers market, slow food, strengthen community, roots and how it ties into local foods, and native pollinators. So these are both of the designs created by the artist. And just as a reminder that these are just digital renderings. So what you're seeing is not exactly how it would look, as these will be hand painted on a wall. So the colors won't be exactly as they are shown here. There won't be slight differences since this is not a printed mural. Again, it is all created by hand and paint. So this first one is the abstract design. It's bold, distinctly contemporary, and sets it apart from what you may expect to see in Matthews. It still tells the narrative of the town's rich history and its current connection to farming with slow food without spelling everything out for the viewer. Quoted from the artist, Osiris, it is meant to be read from right to left. So it starts with the motifs of rail tracks and a stagecoach as integral parts of the growth of the town, leads into an image of a stump with its roots leading to the past. In a way, it symbolizes the town's connection with that history. But out of the stump comes new growth, which would be the Matthews of today, And then the tree then leads to silhouettes of a vegetable garden and a dairy cow and her calf. Dogwood flowers throughout the entire piece tie into the native pollinator theme throughout Matthews. And then the second option is a very realistic design. But again, this rendering is literal photographs of food. This would be painted, so again, it would look a little different in real life. It's a little bit difficult with a realistic mural that has a historic narrative. It may come off as either old-fashioned or a little forced. Those are words from the artist. And it's sometimes difficult to fit everything into a literal narrative. So both of these options were presented to the advisory committee meeting in July, which was also our public input meeting. The committee and the department both submitted their approval for the abstract design with all positive feedback. The idea that this is something so different from any other mural that we have, it's colorful, it's something that would bring in a lot of people who are gonna do it for the gram, meaning they'll post it on Instagram, and lots of other positives were discussed. So these are the two designs, the originals that I'm presenting for your feedback and or approval to proceed with installation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Melissa. Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. I'm all for murals. I'm confused by the reading right to left. For example, I knew there was supposed to be a train or a stagecoach in there, but until now I hadn't found it. They're both beautiful, but if I had an opinion, I would look at the realist, the lower one, as my favorite. Thank you. Either way, it's good.
Thank you, Jeff. Other comments, questions, or motions? Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
I'll make a motion that we accept or approve the mural that was approved by the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee for installation on the brick wall outside of the Loyalist.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion from Mayor Pro Tem Garner, a second from Commissioner Urban, comment from Dave Bland.
Can I ask a question? Is that the upper one that you're saying that's the one will be painted at the Loyalist? I just want to be sure I was voting on the right one.
That's the top image that she showed us.
More abstract.
Very much.
Okay, we have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Garner, a second from Commissioner Urban. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
Commissioner McCool.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Did I get everybody?
Dave Bland.
Commissioner Bland. Commissioner Bland.
Yes.
You voted yes, and that passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. We'll go on to item B, which is also you. You're up. Consider outdoor sculpture gallery program.
Thank you. Hello again. We're going to continue on, continue on this theme for growing public art in Matthews, but this time a three-dimensional topic. So we'd like to propose adding an outdoor sculpture gallery to the town of Matthews. There is one, this is somewhat similar to in the city of Lenoir called the Tucker Gallery that is in existence. I did include some pictures of what that looks like just to give you kind of an idea of what it could be. Suzette Bradshaw is one of the creators from Lenoir, who is also an artist. And so she gave me a full tour, all the details, and a lot of information to help create this proposal. It would be a little bit different here in Matthews. For starters, we don't have brick planters throughout our downtown footprint. So we would be looking at doing a lot of concrete or metal bases, depending on what we can work out with Public Works, but most likely concrete. We also won't be putting a lot of these on the sidewalks, as our sidewalks are not as wide as the city of Lenoir. We don't want to make any issues for pedestrians or traffic. We want to keep it as safe as possible. Some of our sculpture bases could be put in brick planters. For example, some of the proposed locations in front of the library or beside Pizza Peel or something like that, those could be possible options, but this is not set up yet. These are just proposals. So the base itself, while it may look different, whether it's in a brick planter or in concrete on the ground, it would have a uniform metal base that would have the same bolt pattern. So that way an artist could create a base for their sculpture that would work at any of the location. So an artist would be completing an application, submitting photos of their artwork to us, the department. We would present that to the advisory committee for approval, not just for the piece itself, but to also determine a location for it. So I've already been in conversations with Susan, the engineer for Matthews, Live from Public Works, and Nadine from Planning to start conversations about different locations that we have proposed, just to make sure that it's safe, that it's doable, and that it wouldn't cause any issues in any of those areas. Some of them may be close to a road, but not all of them. So we want to take into consideration the height, does the sculpture move? Does it have any moving parts, the colors of it, and a lot more that we would have spelled out. So the applications, like I said, will be reviewed. So not only by the department staff and the advisory committee, but also those town staff that I mentioned as well. And then they would all be presented to y'all, the board, for final approval. Then we would try to keep these pieces on display for at least a year. We would offer the artists a stipend to assist with any costs associated with transporting their piece. And it's, this is a starting point with these 7 proposed locations. It's something that can grow. It would all tie into the Town of Matthews public art page. So, there may be a title card on the piece itself and a QR code, so then it could go to the website, so there'd be more information. Included there, all the documents. So all of the procedures, the actual application, and a proposed waiver form for all of it for this program. So this is just the proposal for bringing an outdoor sculpture gallery to Matthews. We hope that it would bring visitors to Matthews. It'd be a unique opportunity to experience public art for residents here. So you wouldn't have to travel to Charlotte or other bigger cities to see interesting and unique sculptural art.
Melissa, I've got a question. Would there be any effort to make sure there's a mixture of artistic types? So it's like not all abstract or not all modern or whatever?
Yes, absolutely.
Also,
I think that's
also, maybe not have one artist have all the spaces, a distribution of across.
Agreed.
Right.
Yeah.
Melissa, before we select any pieces, they'll come back before the board, probably Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, then through this board to make sure everybody's vetted it. Is that correct?
Yes, so we would just be receiving the applications. We would send our recommendations to the advisory committee. I would present them with all the options. They would send their recommendations to me, and then I would come back like this and hopefully in person present the options to the board first for approval.
Commissioner Miller, you're on mute.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the concept and procedures as outlined of the outdoor sculpture gallery. And thank you, Melissa.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Miller, a second by Commissioner McCool. Mayor Pro Tem Garner, you have a question or comment before we vote?
I had a comment, and I know that Melissa is probably expecting this from me, but I hope that there's a good partnership here with ASC, because I'm sure they would be super excited to share this with the artists that they connect with. And so I'd like to somehow have that included in the process.
Absolutely. I can include that with the call for artists that we do. I try to always include ASC with any call for artists that we put out.
Okay, thank you.
Another comment I'd like to make is, I don't know if it would be appropriate since it's along a floodplain, but it would seem some of our greenways would be really good opportunities to place art along the greenway. I don't know if that's possible or not, but anyway, we have a motion from Commissioner Miller, a second from Commissioner McCool. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland,
Yes.
Mr. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Whitley,
Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Mr. McCool.
Yes.
I vote yes as well, so that passes unanimously. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you all so much.
Going to item 11C, consider contract for structure demolitions. This is going to be Corey King and Hazen, I think.
Corey, do you want to take Keziah, and then I'll take Matthews School Road?
Yes, so as you know, part of the Four Corners development, the town did accept donation of property. I believe it's roughly 4 acres, but it did also include the home on the site. And in this case, town staff does not have a use for the structure. What we saw at Purser Holsey Park was when the house remained, it did turn into just opportunities for vandalism and additional maintenance, sort of stress on Public Works Department and you know, Parks and Recreation also. So in this memo, the ask is for, I guess, approval and also funding to demolish the house and detached garage storage that is on the site at Sam Newell and Keziah. And reasoning being, again, it's really is just an opportunity for vandalism in the current condition of that structure.
Thank you, Corey. Any questions, comments, or motions? Mr. Miller.
Corey, what type of condition is the house in?
Man, not sure if I'm qualified to to really describe it. I mean, it was inhabited before they gave the property to the town. I mean, it's a house. It's I mean, it's not in a, say, terrible condition. But of course, you know, as a home and built the way it is with just small rooms, really is about use. You know, our department and other departments really don't have a use for that space the way it's configured. Go ahead.
Should we or could we consider talking to Natisha with Habitat for Humanity, and before it's demolished, ask them if they want to go into it and remove windows or a fireplace mantle or cabinets or anything, and to be donated to Habitat for Humanity before it's demolished?
Yeah, it may be worth it. It's an awesome idea. I have not had that conversation with her about desire, but it's something we could present.
I think it's worth exploring.
Okay. And now the garage is in much worse condition than the house. Just walking around it, there's considerable deterioration and, like I said, just damage to the structure of that garage. And I do think that one certainly needs to go.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Is there an opportunity for the fire department to practice burning at that home?
That was an idea. They are going to practice some training. I don't think they're going to set it on fire, but some other types of training in the house. Actually, I guess both houses.
Are we talking about the Matthews School Road one at the same time? Or are we talking about them separately?
Well, I can talk about the Matthews School Road quickly. You know, we purchased it for $100,000. It's future right of way for Red Lock Ridge Extension. It's a blight on the neighborhood. I think we owe it to the community to take it down really as quickly as we can. And the fire department has use, like Corey said, training use, but they have no interest in burning it.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Is it beyond preservation? I mean, I hate seeing a 100-year-old home demolished. But you're nodding yes, so I don't need to go further.
Yes, it is beyond preservation.
How's everybody doing? Someone like to make a motion? Mr. Whitley.
Yeah, I'll make that motion. I see John getting ready to do it anyway, that we give the town permission to demolish those two sites. Approval of $38,200 for a fund balance to support removal of the house and outbuilding located on Sam Newell and Castle Road and Matthew School Road, and approve a social budget ordinance amendment. Thank you for putting that back up.
Second.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Bland.
Commissioner Urban?
Do we want to amend that motion just to allow Corey to talk to Habitat or somebody to see if they want to take any products out of that? I doubt it, but I mean, it's clapboard siding, windows, mantles, things like that, and then they can go ahead and take the buildings down.
Well, you know, I sort of figured if we do that, and if he thought that he could do that without putting that in there, they're gonna tear it down anyway. So I don't know how good the windows or doors and stuff is in it, but I was gonna leave that to town and Corey and them to see if they wanted to look and see before they demolition it.
We can commit to that no matter what the motion says, because it sounds like it's.
Then I'll second the motion. We'll keep on going.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Whitley, a second from Commissioner Urban. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
I vote yes, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Move on to 11D, receive information on electric vehicle charging station. Life Fitzpatrick.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, commissioners. I guess it was about 6 months ago, we looked at adding a level 2 charger in public parking. We didn't move forward with that project, but as everyone's familiar with, there is a DC fast charger that is no longer functioning along Matthews Station Street. And the company that was running that facility has offered it to the town. So we saw this as an opportunity to, bring this back to the board to see if there is a desire to build an infrastructure. And I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint real quick, and I will go through that. Pardon me. All right, is that up okay for everyone?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. So we thought this would be a great opportunity to start building our infrastructure. As I mentioned, the company that was operating that charger is not going to move forward with replacing it. It was on an older network system. The charger itself has really no value, but the infrastructure, including the meter, transformer, and other associated infrastructure, we feel has enough value that we should consider building part of, starting an EV, electric vehicle charging infrastructure within the town, and be adding to the EV charging network across the state. And with that, we propose installing a DC fast charger, and we think it'd be valuable to look at alternative funding sources to pay for this charger. NCDOT did hold public sessions back in 2019, and their key takeaways were education. Do people know about electric vehicle and charging? Affordability, that's something that is more on their plate. It's about the cost of electric vehicles and fees associated with them. Then there's the convenience and policy side. And that's where, out of the 20 strategies in their takeaways, there were 2 that really stood out, and that was, a lack of charging infrastructure and knowledge and how to do these things properly. The biggest obstacle for EV adoption is a lack of infrastructure. And one of the things that was identified by the public sessions is that people are looking for fast charging. And that's what this is. It's a DC fast charger. It's what we're proposing to move forward with. And one of the things that they talk about is best practices on how to facilitate and increase deployment of the charging infrastructure. And as I mentioned, fast charging is the ideal because it's placing them in retail centers, public parking, and other destinations that will support visitors and tourists who want to charge a vehicle in a reasonable amount of time. And one thing that we offer is proximity to highways and a small town charm without the traffic and congestion of like Charlotte or other areas. So look at the different chargers. So an L1 charger is something you can put in your home. It takes about 20 hours to fully charge a vehicle. It just runs on a regular 120 outlet. A level 2 charger is what we discussed before. That you can fully charge a vehicle in 4 to 8 hours. It's 240 volts. It's similar to a clothes dryer. A DC fast charger can charge a vehicle in less than 60 minutes. And that would be, from a zero charge to full charge. It's a 500 volt system. It's 120 amps, and it's a 50,000 watt max charger. So what you'll notice when we start looking at it, if you recall from before the level 2 charger, the cost of a charger was around, I think, 8 to 16,000, depending. The DC fast chargers, though, are in the range of 15 to 40,000 or more. And the primary difference is the amount of components it takes for these chargers. I mean, a level 2 is over 48 hours. It's not generating the heat, has about 200 parts. The DC fast chargers, with the amount of heat they're generating, there are about 2,000 different components, and all these components have to be designed to handle that type of electrical transfer in a short amount of time. So it does have to dissipate a lot of heat. So that's the primary difference of cost. So DC fast chargers, this map shows there are no DC fast chargers within 2 miles of Matthews. There are 9 within a 10-mile radius. 7 of those 9 are located at auto dealerships and fueling stations. 2 of them, one of them at South Park Mall and the other one near Thomas Street, are the only 2 that I would call or identify as destinations. By putting our downtown, we are meeting some of those goals from the North Carolina State initiatives for electric vehicles, because we're providing a destination for people, and especially people that are traveling along the 77 and or 485, 85 corridor. So some of the benefits, obviously, if people are coming here, if they're traveling, they're going to shop, they're going to have lunch, they're going to have dinner. So we could see revenues and from sales from nearby retail. We will also provide an incentive for the adoption of electric vehicles within town. Obviously, if we have more electric vehicles, we will recognize or have lower noise and lower air pollution, which goes to the next point of we will have environmental and health benefits. It would also provide a visible example of the town's commitment to reducing our carbon footprint. And over time, there's potential to reduce fossil fuel imports on a national level. So cost estimate, as I mentioned, the DC fast charger is about 15 to 40,000. The installation is typically 50,000, but if we do put it in the location where the prior one was, our cost would probably be less than 5,000, but we may have some permitting and replacing some cables, but it seems really minimal. The other cost, data contracts, network contracts, card readers, credit card payment fees, those are really all potential fees that could be under option 1. And so I'll go through the options. Option 1 is for the town to purchase, install, and operate a DC fast charger, and that would be using existing funds, either operating funds or getting money from another fund. That one does have a high cost. We would have full control over the system, and it's something we could do immediately. It would not require grant funding or anything else that we'd have to seek. Option 2 is to find a second party to own and operate. There would be no cost, but we would, again, have very little control over it. And at this time, as I mentioned in the memo, Duke Energy did have a program. They're allowing people to join, or municipalities that are interested parties to join a waiting list, but they would own and operate it. But at this time, since they are only waitlisting, I could not provide a timeline for that. But that would be like a second option that we would pursue. Option 3 is, finding alternative funding. That's grant funding. It would be low cost. We would have full control. And if the NCDOT, and this is again in reference to the Volkswagen grant, they are coming out with their phase 2 that's still open for public comment until September 7th. If they do follow this a similar funding that they did for phase 1, it would probably be about 10 months from now, and the DC fast charger would be funded at 100%. One thing I think that's a great opportunity, and I think on that fund, while we're not, I think we have a lot of great value. If you look at the grant scoring criteria that was in the phase 1, cost effectiveness, I can't really provide it, but the fact that we would have the infrastructure would be half the cost. I don't know their exact formula, so I don't know what that would be, but my guess is we'd probably get a 10 out of 20 points at a minimum. The distance from the interchange, we're less than 2 miles. So on their scoring criteria, we would get a 15 out of 15. Distance to other DC fast chargers, it's less than 25 miles. There are a few in this area, so we would only get 5 out of 25. But as I mentioned, I think what we offer here is connectivity that helps us score better. The environmental justice score, that's just a flat score that they calculate for Mecklenburg County. Traffic density, well, everyone sees the traffic around here. We would score either a 10 or 15. I'm not sure if they would classify it with Monroe Road or East John Street or 74. I'm not, and they didn't give a lot of guidance on how. They just kind of gave a range. And then distance to amenities. Well, we have on-site amenities at this location, so we'd score 15 out of 15 on that. So I think the grant opportunity is really good and something that we should consider pursuing. Utility cost is something that we will incur regardless. It will be driven by usage. It probably about $32 a month. A full charge on a DC fast charger is about 8.8 kilowatt hours, which is we're paying around $13 per kilowatt hour. So it would be $1.20 or less than $1.20 for a vehicle to charge there for utility costs. So as I mentioned, I think the opportunity for the grant is something that we're well positioned for, both with the existing infrastructure and where we are located. So we're just asking that the board, approve the town manager and staff to seek alternative funding for a DC fast charger. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the proposal or anything else you have.
Commissioner Miller.
Thank you, Life. I have to admit, I'm a bit skeptical about this. If in the costs associated with data reporting, and there was another line item, it was 14 to 40 a month for data, 34 to 42 a month for the network contract. So we're at 75. In order to make our money back, does that mean we'd have to have 35 charges, give or take? And
I'm sorry, guys.
Is staff going to be responsible for answering the call volume when something goes wrong? Or I just don't want to burden staff with any more responsibility. I would much rather have a third party take this over and wash our hands clean. It's a good feature, but it hasn't worked thus far, and I'm wondering why.
So when you talk about one of the things with the grant, we would be able to pay upfront the data contracts, network contracts, as well as maintenance. That was one of the big drivers of the costs with the level 2. That's what almost doubled the cost of the project. And those were requirements that were in the grant proposal. We had to pay for those either upfront or monthly. We included them as an upfront. That way we could have the grant pay for those charges upfront. And that's something that with the phase 2 grant, that's what we would try to take advantage of. So the entire network and the system would be paid for 5 years.
Thank you.
And that is with the understanding that the grant would be the same as it was in phase 1. If it's completely different, even if it was, you approved us, we wouldn't move forward if the cost was significantly changed.
Thank you.
Let's just make a comment. I think it's well known probably by everybody on this call that the electrification of the United States fleet is coming. I've read that within the next 20 years, probably 75% or more of all vehicles in the US will be electric. So that being said, I don't think that technology needs the assistance of Matthews to help that take off. And as I said the last time, I believe I was the sole person that voted against this, but I for the life of me, don't know why we would subsidize someone to charge their car for free. They can go home and charge it, or as Commissioner Miller said, let a third party do it. It's been a total pain in the rear end with the one we had. I agree with Commissioner Miller, so I don't know why we would why do we want to get into this? Let a third party do it. If the market wants it, let a third party do it. And as I said before, nobody's offering me, free cans of gasoline when I go to the library, or if I visit, Cornelius, they don't give me free gas if I come to their town. So why would we give free charges on a car? I don't know why our taxpayers should subsidize that. And let the market work it out. It's going to work it out. If 75% of the fleet is electric, there'll be charging stations all over the place because they'll have to be to people to get around. So I don't think we need to jump in that. Commissioner Whitley,
May I respond just briefly, please?
Sure.
Yeah, one of the difficult things is with the new innovation is that innovation curve, the adoption curve. We have the innovators that have already adopted electric vehicles. We have a lot of early adopters where a lot of times the government or other entities or nonprofits, it's to help move it from that point to the majority adopters. And we kind of just temporarily fill that gap to, increase the rate of adoption. And that's how I look at it is starting it, getting us on the map. And that way, when we move to later phases of adoption, we're already part of the system and we have people and infrastructure to support it.
Fair enough. Commissioner Whitley?
Yeah, thank you. A quick question. Are we talking about putting this back at the old site or the site we talked about near the railroad track? There was 2 stations that we were talking about near there. Are we talking about those 2 sites or putting it where the old site was?
This would be going in the same location where it is now at Matthew Station Street, right there by Jill near the bank. Part of the appeal to that area is the infrastructure is already there. We wouldn't have to put in a meter. We wouldn't have to put in a transformer. All the wiring, everything's there. The only thing we would have to do is pull out the old charger and put it and attach a new charger and run the existing electricity. It would be a 1-for-1 swap. The only thing we would have to exchange is the actual charger itself.
Okay, with that being said, Mayor, I sort of look at this another way as a innovator of town of Matthews and Rising Town. I look at it as more of a town keeping up pace with the times that's changing and coming. And I look at it as a service for the town to its citizens as well as its visitors that's coming to town. That we are part of that. I'm for innovation and making sure that we keep pace with these times that we're changing now. And I think it'd be a plus for the town that the town actually be the one that have those charging stations there. That's my 2 cents. I just look at it about like solar. Solar is coming, and I notice a lot of people now getting more solar energy around different places. But it's the time that's coming and where we are now with this green energy and all this stuff that's changing now. That's my 2 cents. And certainly we got a grant that can sustain some of this.
Yeah, I'm not against having the charging station. I just don't think the town should be paying for it. Let a third party pay for it. Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
I think there are benefits to having this. It's funny that you mentioned Cornelius because I'm looking at a map right now. And Cornelius has 2 electric vehicle plugins at their town hall. So I think it makes us competitive with other towns to bring people in and stay a little while, shop and eat at restaurants. It's not providing a whole town with gasoline, but it is providing an attraction that keeps Matthews on par with Cornelius. I think Davidson, Charlotte's getting some. Of all the ones that Duke Energy, I think Matthews was kind of left out in the dark, and the towns around us, maybe except for Mint Hill and Pineville, are going to have these electric vehicles provided by Duke Energy.
All right. Any other comments, questions, or motions?
So if I may, I'll add another comment. And I'll scroll down to the, oops, sorry about that. Scrolled too quick. I'll just go this. So in the action, I have, seek alternative funding. I see that as being both option 2 and option 3, where it could be Duke and applying for both of them at the same time, and and not wait for one versus the other, but get both those balls moving and see how it turns out. But both of them would be a 0 to no cost. The only challenge with option 2 is we essentially sign over that area for 5 years for Duke to run it. I think they would possibly be a better steward than the current one, but that was a change in technology that they couldn't control.
Mayor, Commissioner Urban had a question.
Okay, John.
I'm in the mayor and Jeff's court. I really wouldn't want to see Hazen put on his tool belt and go out there and try and fix the wiring on the charger. Duke Power, let's get on their wait list. Just go with option number 2. Let's leave it to the people that know how to do it the best. I don't want to get into the solar power industry. I don't want to get into EV chargers. I want the town to just, regulate the taxes, provide a good quality of life, be the catalyst for things, but I don't want to be taking over all these things. I think if you ask Hazen about these utility cities and how they operate, how that just sort of blows up the whole system, I don't know we want to go in that direction.
Life, can we review option 2 again?
Certainly. Do you want me to go full screen, or is that large enough?
That's large enough. I just want to know what I'm voting on here.
Maybe I should pull up or stop screen sharing. I believe because I just had a second party to own and operate in my memo. Let me pull
Right. So, I mean, it would be totally out of the hands of the town. Somebody else would handle it and they'd pay for it and everything, right?
Yeah, the one I found was they called it a grant. It was applying from through Duke Energy. We would enter a contract. They would own, operate, install, furnish, maintain it for a minimum of 3 years. But our contract would be for 5. At that 3 years, it would be reviewed by the Utility Commission, and they would have to approve whether Duke could go for it. I guess they only gave Duke a 3-year window for their initial run. That may just be typical for utility companies and the Utility Commission.
And after that, what happens?
Yeah.
If it's, I guess it would depend on whether or not the Utility Commission approved it, but at the end of 5 years would be either renegotiated, or Duke would determine whether or not it was beneficial to them, because they are going to charge to use it. They will charge for electricity. It won't be.
But would it ever refer back under to the stewardship of the town?
After the 5-year agreement, I guess we would take over. We'd have to look at that contract in more detail to see. I would assume the existing infrastructure would be ours. They would probably just remove everything that they installed.
And we get the newer model.
Mr. Bland.
I was going to say, I was looked on my computer here. They have charging stations in Mint Hill. There's one like 2 miles from here in on Weddington Road. And looks like they have a number of them like 3 miles from here in Charlotte, different charging stations. But, I sort of like what Larry feels sort of the same way Larry does. I think that this is something that's definitely coming, and we need to I'd like to see us take a little bit of a leadership thing. I don't want to spend a ton of money doing it. And if we can do it by grants or by having somebody encouraging or get us somebody else coming in and do it, that's better. But I do think there's a need for it. And we need, I mean, I just know from looking around town, there are a lot of people in and around Matthews that have electric vehicles. So we have the Tesla dealership here in the town of Matthews. And, you know, I actually took a ride for the first time in an electric vehicle about a month ago. And I was amazed that I was a lot more than I thought it was going to be. It's an incredible vehicle. But I think that's the way of the future. And I think that we need to at least stay up with our surrounding and neighboring cities and towns. That's sort of my 2 cents.
I don't disagree. I just think those folks, the free market will build the equivalent of gas stations to charge your car, and you'll go to an equivalent of a gas station and get a charge. I don't know why towns have to pay for it.
I just think I like to see them available, you know, but I agree with what you're saying. I'm not for spending a lot of the town's money or efforts or staff having to fool with it, but I would like to see us encourage it as to the extent that we can. And if we can get grants to help encourage it, I think that's a good idea.
The one that we had, I never saw a car being charged there. It was broken most of the time, but even when it wasn't broken, I never saw a car there. Maybe it was a couple of years ago. Maybe it was earlier in the evolution of electric cars, but I never saw a vehicle. And I was at town hall a lot, and I never saw one there.
The most incredible thing that I saw when I drove in this thing last month was in the Tesla S, and on the big screen, it shows you every single charging station that is around and how many bays are available at the time for charging. And I thought it was just an amazing vehicle, but you know,
Yeah, they're pretty cool. No doubt. No doubt.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Somebody going to make a motion or not, or what are we going to do?
Go back to the town recommendation.
Sure, and sorry about that. And
Say that again, Commissioner. I'm sorry, Commissioner Whitley. I didn't hear your motion.
I ain't made a motion yet.
Maybe that's why I didn't hear it.
Yeah, I like to make a motion.
Pull up the memo so it can help with the motion.
Certainly. Let me, I think it's on the other one. I'm going to stop sharing. And I think that one should be up on the primary screen, or no. Yep, there it is. Thank you, Lori or Jay.
I'd like to make a motion that we provide feedback and approve to seek alternate funding sources for the DC fast charger. And in that, I think if you want to look at option 2, if Duke Power is going to fund it and take care of it for 5 years, then that gives us, but at least the town of Matthews will have a charge in. I think it's important. I think it's very important that the town do have a charger in the town of Matthews. And if Duke Powers will take care, I don't have no problem with that, but I do like to see one.
So that motion's for option number 2, Larry?
Well, it's included. I think the motions give them, go back to, I think give them authority to look and see. And I think that's what I'm hearing from at least 3 of you want to let Duke Power. I don't have no problem with Duke Power taking it. I just look at things different. I know Matthews is a pretty wealthy town that the little $60 or $70 that we will find out. I think we can find that somewhere else, even if with the grant. But I like to see a charge here. I don't want Matthews not to be represented in the times that we're living in as we do progress and moving forward. So you know, 1, 2, or 3, whatever the town look at, and they feel like it's a better option that they can bring to us. But I don't have no problem with 2 if that's what they bring back to us.
I think he's already brought those to us. I think what he's looking for is a more poignant direction. Am I missing something?
Well, we could reapply under option 2. We could reapply.
Okay.
Could be
And that's
another
what,
one.
yeah. I mean, if the board supports us applying for any type of alternative funding sources that we could fund. Obviously, before we would sign an agreement or accept the funding, we would bring that back to the board for final approval. Essentially, I'd come back, say, look, we got this approval. This is what it's covering. This would be our cost. And all, those details in between the now and the end of it, we would know then. It's just whether or not we want to try to do it on our own, or if, you approve that, we go out and apply for these different funding grants, multiple if possible. If you only want one, that's okay, but that's what I was hoping to get.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Whitley. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I'm not sure. So let me be clear. What he's looking to do, he's thrown option number 1 out the door. He's saying under option number 2 and number 3, there are different funding sources and options to look for funding sources. So is that how I'm understanding this motion? This motion is a hybrid. It's taking 2 options and seeing which one flies.
That's not my intent. My intent was, and I thought what I asked was to give them an opportunity to go look at all of them. And he's shown it to all of us. And I hear some of y'all saying that you like number 2. I don't have no problem with number 2, but I didn't want to just limit it to number 2 because I heard Life said that number 3, where it could be fully funded if we get some grants and stuff. But my whole point is I would like to have a station in Matthews, whether Duke Power runs it or we pick up a small amount of a tab, so that we would be an aggressive town as we are, to show that we are in the up and coming with the charger. Because as Dave said, we ain't got a electric factory dealership right here in our own town. I think it just behooves us to at least have a charger in town with the town.
So the motion is for all 3. Commissioner Miller?
Alternative funding is only option 2 and 3. Option 1 was the town providing the funding. The difference that I see is option 3 with a grant would let us manage it, which is the reason I prefer option 2. And let me ask the question, if Tesla has a dealership in Matthews, do they have a charging station?
Absolutely.
They do, but it's only for Tesla vehicles. This charging station would provide 2 different types of connection points.
Okay.
A Tesla owner has to bring their own connection port, and is that correct? And then
yes, they have an adapter that would connect to, I think the DCC2 is what I believe is the connector, the port is called, but yes, they have an adapter they use.
So there's a general connection for most electric vehicles, but Tesla has sort of the proprietary adapter.
Correct.
I much prefer option 2 so that we don't have to manage it. And like John said, Hazen doesn't have to get out on a little ladder to work on it.
The current motion on the table is to consider all 3 options.
Let me modify that, Mayor. Option 2 and 3 is my motion, and let them come and bring it back and show us which one they think is better for the town. And then we can see the grant and the cost. So that's my motion.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner, do you support that?
I second that.
All right, we have a motion for only options 2 and 3 by Commissioner Whitley, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Garner. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
And I vote no. So that passes 6-1 with the mayor in opposition.
I ain't gonna let you ride in my electric car, Mayor.
Hey, man, got to go pay for it. I don't want the town paying any of that stuff. Yep. All right, let's move on to item 11E, discuss sidewalk priorities. Susan Habina-Willard.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. It's so good to see everyone tonight. I am so happy to be talking with you about one of my most favorite things ever. That's sidewalks. I love to walk on sidewalks. I love to build sidewalks. I love to draw on sidewalks. You know, it's been over 2 years since we've last had a discussion with the board about sidewalks. Jay, I actually have a few slides. If you would let me share screen, I want to go over these slides with the commissioners. Give me just one moment. At that 2019 meeting where we last talked about it, it was specifically to address gaps in the sidewalk network. At the conference, the board learned that the town has over 100 miles of sidewalks within the town limits, which doesn't include greenways and private sidewalks. So even more walkable spaces. And within that 104 miles, staff identified gaps totaling 3.7 miles. At that time, if staff embarked on all the projects, it would have cost almost $3 million. You know, at that meeting in 2019, there was no distinct direction, except that the board wanted to see projects before we got started on them. And there was no funding allocated at that meeting for sidewalk gap completion. However, since the 2019 meeting, staff took on a few projects, sketched a plan for that 200-foot gap on McKee Road, because we do have a little bit of excess grant funds that we are hoping to put toward that. And you've seen us before you asking for money for planning and design and construction of the 500-foot gap of sidewalk on North Ames Street. Oh, sorry, the McKee Road one, we're hoping to bring that before you in September. We've also worked with DOT. Okay, we'll just give DOT the credit for filling that 1,000-foot sidewalk gap on South Trade Street. And then Town Crews filled a gap on Dion Drive, and that was in partnership with a development project through Habitat. To prepare for tonight's discussion, I wanted to further talk about this distinction that staff has between gaps and projects. For the purposes of our discussion, a gap is a short section of sidewalk. It's typically within the right of way, and that is a section of sidewalk that's just like missing. There's sidewalk over here and sidewalk over here, and for some reason there's no sidewalk in the middle. That gap could be filled relatively quickly with only a sketch plan, and it's a short section, like I said, with a relatively low cost. Projects, on the other hand, may fill a gap, but it's typically a longer section. There's some sort of design challenge like drainage, topography, or right-of-way, which causes section not to be built in the first place, hence leaving the gap. These projects may not connect to existing pieces of sidewalk, but rather provide connectivity. So maybe there's sidewalk here, and then maybe an intersection over here. And so that project would fill that connectivity portion. Projects, as we know, can be very costly, and the most costly ones staff would request to get pursue NCDOT grant funds for. Another distinction of sidewalk gaps is that the width of the sidewalk in a sidewalk gap project matches the width of the sidewalk on either side of the gap. Typically, this is about 5 feet. Projects, on the other hand, they can be any width you want. Current projects that staff is undertaking are all wider than 5 feet. This is because they're in an area where more pedestrians are expected, such as the North Ames Street Sidewalk Project, or where they're expected to accommodate more modes. Sam Newell and Matthews Mint Hill and the Crestdale one that we just finished are all designed to accommodate cyclists and pedestrians. I know you like pictures, so here's some pictures. The one on the left is a quick snap I took on the Crestdale Road side path, where I'd seen the cyclist pause to stop to read one of the great informational kiosks out there on the Crestdale Heritage Trail. And then on the right is your typical Matthews neighborhood. This 5-foot sidewalk there easily accommodates this lovely family and their matching sneakers for their after dinner walk. But I'm wondering if you'll take this sidestep with me for a moment, is a 5-foot sidewalk still appropriate for the town of Matthews? So remember, sidewalks should be wider where more pedestrians or modes need to be accommodated. Those who attended the ribbon cutting ceremony for the Crestdale Heritage Trail, you noticed 3 or 4 bicyclists as we stood out there for that ceremony. And some people even walked to that event. So imagine in the picture on the right, with that family, a jogger or a parent with a stroller is heading towards this family. Well, someone has to step into the yard, or maybe they go single file down the sidewalk so that the other group can pass. In this neighborhood that you see here on the right, maybe that doesn't happen so frequently. But I would like you to think about the new developments that we're seeing. There are more units per the acre. And so that means there's going to be more people out and about. Should we increase our neighborhood sidewalks to 6 feet? What I have for you on the next 2 slides, I hope you enjoy, it's a comparison among sidewalk widths. We'll go through those briefly. This very, very nice family agreed to walk different widths of sidewalks, just so you can see how much space is really available as they walk. So in the photo on the left, like the slide before, these 3 carbon-based life forms can walk comfortably side by side on a 5-foot sidewalk. That's why back in the early 2000s, we used to build 4-foot sidewalks, remember? Or maybe you don't remember, but I remember building 4-foot sidewalks and we thought we were so great. And then we're like, there's a lot more people out and about because these sidewalks are awesome. Let's make them 5 feet. And yay us, we've got 5 feet sidewalks. But if there's a family walking the opposite direction, into the grass they go, or single file. And in the picture on the right, you can see a 6-foot width. You can actually literally see that 1 foot just to the right of the little one, where they're walking about the same space apart, but then there's an extra little piece on the side. So if a jogger comes at them, they just scooch up and the jogger goes by. In non-COVID times, in COVID times, everyone scatters, right? But, or in COVID times, but in non-COVID times, they just scrunch up and the jogger goes by. And as a matter of fact, 2 strollers can pass on a 6-foot sidewalk. I have tested that myself, and it is lovely to be able to pass without having to off-road your baby in their stroller. But then we come to a section of this particular neighborhood where there's multifamily, and this is along a thoroughfare. And you don't see in this picture, but there's a bus stop just ahead. And now the sidewalk is 8 feet wide. In this picture, you see that little guy he's kind of dancing, and he's got plenty of room to dance. As a matter of fact, a dancing family could even pass them on this 8-foot sidewalk. And then on the right are 10-foot sidewalks. There's plenty of room. You can see, like human nature, they just kind of spread out to the space that's available to them. And it's a nice wide, you can easily envision cyclists passing each other. Multiple dogs, those dog walkers that have 4 dogs, maybe not in your neighborhood. I see them in my neighborhood, but there's plenty of room on this 10-foot side path. The city of Charlotte has even started looking at 12-foot and 14-foot side paths to help better facilitate cyclists and pedestrians together in this shared space. Matthew's staff briefly talked about it, the wider side paths, and we still kind of landed on 10-foot for Matthews. So in Matthews, you will primarily find 5-foot sidewalks, but the new 10-foot wide sidewalks, the side paths, they're great. They're really, really welcome feel to those who want to be on their bikes or jogging, and they want to be out of the vehicle lanes. Now you'll see joggers jogging in the vehicle lanes right next to a sidewalk. Those people, I can't help them. I want them on the sidewalk. I give them a sidewalk. That's their choice. But for those who want to be out of the vehicle lane, which is the majority of the people that live in Matthews, they do want to be on these wider side paths. And staff appreciates you letting us build these wide sidewalks so to accommodate those modes. The question of sidewalk widths is really important right now because I'm working on updating the Mecklenburg County land development standards. Our planting strip widths are not accurately represented in our standards. Our UDO says 8 feet, and you can see here our planting strip widths say 4 feet and 5 feet. So we'll get those fixed. But in the meantime, we want to add that 10-foot wide side path on arterial streets, right, on our thoroughfares. Right now, we say the thoroughfares are sized for bike lanes, and staff feels in Matthews side paths are more appropriate. So we do want to change to add 10-foot on those arterial streets. If you like those 6-foot sidewalks that I showed you, maybe now is the time too, we can update our residential streets and our collector streets for a 6-foot sidewalk instead of that 5-foot sidewalk. So thanks for taking that sidestep. I hope you enjoyed that photo gallery I put together for you to be able to really see kind of what that space means to a group of people walking. In your packet, you have this lovely map that Dana put together for us. The bright green is what we've identified as needed. And you can see it's all over the town. Little pieces, big pieces, north side, south side, downtown. And that's where there's gaps, where there's missing connectivity. As I'm looking at it, I'm seeing some pieces we missed. So there's more that needs to go on this map right now. And the table that accompanied this map in your packet correlates as much as possible to this map. I have one more slide that I want to pull up, and then I can pull up the table if that's something that you want to look at. I was asked tonight to provide information about sidewalks. And so I wanted to share with you kind of the last time we talked, what we've done since then, and what could be done, what the needs really are. I suppose you're not surprised by the first bullet in this slide. I mean, the needs are, we need funding to fund sidewalks, to fill these gaps, and to embark on projects to create that pedestrian connectivity that's part of the vision of Matthews. In 2019, we were kicking around the idea of asking money to get started with kind of a gaps and smaller projects program. 300,000 per year for the next 10 years, maybe, because we had a $3 million figure that we were looking at. Would that be part of a CIP, or would that be part of a bond package? I don't know. We could really use some direction on that. Staff will continue to keep this list going and updating the map annually with sidewalks that are constructed by developers, gaps identified by staff or others. Staff will continue to find ways to fill these gaps through regulations, through development plans, and seeking grants. There's currently an open call for projects from CARPO. And those projects are the ones that are $1 million and more because of that cost benefit ratio and scale. And lastly, if you're interested in increasing sidewalk widths due to more dense housing developments in Matthews, that can be easily rolled into our UDO Chapter 7 and land development standards changes. That's simply changing that 5 to a 6. And once it's adopted, developers would then start installing 6-foot sidewalks on residential streets. Just pull up that table for you real quick. This is in your packet. The first page is what was shown in 2019, and I think there was maybe one subsequent conversation. This is in alphabetical order. It's not in criteria order. It's not in tier order. Of course, I noticed that one E instead of E, so it's slightly in alphabetical order. And then there's 14 projects that we showed you before, and then it's blurry. My computer says it's late. I apologize. The second page is all the ones that were not, that additional ones that were identified by staff. And those are all outside of the downtown area. Again, I was asked to bring information to you. I hope you feel as invigorated about sidewalks as I do. Staff would like to hear from you what you would like to see. And we would also like to hear from you about money. And Hazen, you asked me to present this item. Was there anything that I missed from what we discussed?
No, I appreciate all the hard work. I think there's probably a discussion about filling in the gaps, and that's, I would say, serious money. But I do think an easy lift is sidewalk widths, and I think that's a good conversation to have. And if you guys, the board doesn't want to talk about it tonight, we can always bring it up at another meeting, but that's all I have.
Susan, one thing that I think is important, and Mayor Pro Tem Garner and I have discussed this a couple times, because she was the one that wanted specifically to have this agenda item added. And that is, I would be interested, not tonight, but at some point, in seeing how staff prioritizes all these projects and which ones would you like to see done for whatever reason. What do you think is the most important? We've got a ton of stuff. What should we do? What should we do first? What should we prioritize? That would be important for me. I don't know if you want to comment on that, but Commissioner Miller, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a priority and a question on the sidewalk. The first priority is the gap at the Fincher property on McKee Road. It's in between Windsor Run and McKee Farms. And a lot of those people do that walk and feel awkward when they have to go behind a white picket fence and, get in the mud, so to speak. That's something we discussed on the campaign trail 2 years ago now. And so I'm all in favor of that one and would consider that a priority. And then the question I have is the Ames Street. Is that, Susan, is that where the field is, or across from the field on the private residential side? Where is that Ames?
It's where the field is. So that gap is created by the development at the corner of Ames and Park Center, and then a new development coming in at the corner of Ames and Matthews, and that created that gap across the field. So we're trying to get out ahead of that private development and get that gap filled in.
And I would lift up to the board that property has been sought out before, and although it was turned down, if that property gets developed, they'll pay for the sidewalk and we won't have to front the bill on that. And right now they're walking through, anyone that would walk there is going through a field, but it has been a sought out property and the developer would have to pay for that going forward.
And remember, this is one that you've seen recently from us. It is funded. We received CDBG Community Development Block Grant funds, which came with a 0 town match. The town did commit a little bit of money towards it, so we are going to get that constructed. We're hoping to put that to construction next year at a fraction of the cost for the town. Currently, people are walking down the middle of the street when they walk there. They're not walking in the field, they're going down the middle of the street. So we'd like to get them, on a sidewalk.
So there'll be little or no cost to the town then?
That's correct.
Well, thank you.
Little cost. The town committed a little bit. And there's some asphalt patching. The grant doesn't pay for asphalt, so we'll be doing some asphalt patching too.
Okay.
Jeff, it's funny that you mentioned the Fincher property because my son mentioned that to me recently. He's since moved on to college in New York, but he used to ride his bicycle along that pathway to go to the Y from our house and said it was really awkward there and people were walking in the street. And he mentioned it to me. He said, "Hey, Dad, you guys need to get that stuff fixed." So
that's the one we're hoping to bring to you in September. We're currently getting quotes, contractor quotes, and talking with the property owner again.
Thank you.
And it's been hard, right? I mean, we're working with DOT and there's some design challenges as well, but I know that's an important one for the board.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner, do you have any questions or comments?
Well, I'm excited to hear about this again because it's something that I think we all consider really important, but it just sort of dropped off of our radar for a while we're thinking about COVID and tornadoes and all of that stuff. So, I'm interested to hear about how things are prioritized, but I'd also like to talk about the solid answers to funding. And I feel like we have delayed funding sidewalks for so long that even if we, opt for a bond, somehow this needs to be worked into the annual budget so that it's not, so there's always some sort of funding for fixing sidewalks or some sort of funding going forward. So that's really what my interest is how can we stop delaying the work on sidewalks as a board and really support getting these important items into action.
Susan, just out of curiosity, were sidewalks ever 3 feet that you can recall?
So if you've ever walked across the Pleasant Plains Bridge over 485.
Yes, right. Okay, I have.
So somebody thought that it was brilliant to put a 3 foot. I mean, there's something there, right? There's something for one person to walk across that bridge. But if you're on a bike, forget about it.
Oh, it's terrifying. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, people talking about a 3 foot width sidewalk and then it went to 4, 5, 6. But yeah, the 6 certainly looks much more comfortable than a 4 or 5. No doubt.
I love the 6 foot sidewalks in my neighborhood. They're the best.
Commissioner Urban?
Yeah, I'm having always been a proponent of sidewalks. I'm glad to hear the board talking about this. It wasn't but a few short years ago, we couldn't get any sidewalks. And then we were finally getting a sidewalk on one side of the street. It was impossible to get it on both sides of the street. The only thing I would say is that it's easy to say I love 6 foot wide sidewalks, but then I look talking with the developer about these cost issues. If you're going to do that, make sure there's some carrots and not sticks in the development process. So the more that a developer can provide total streets or wider sidewalks, he gets a credit for something. Just don't hit him with the 6 foot or 10 foot wide sidewalks, because you know he's going to take that out of the project someplace else. And that takes the quality out of the project. So there's trade-offs for everything. And right now, everything is extremely expensive. And so, you know, I'd rather have a 5 foot sidewalk and a good quality project than have someone say, I want a 6 foot sidewalk, and he cuts something back or doesn't do the project at all. So I'd be more than happy to have that conversation with Susan and about widths of sidewalks and all. We're not a heavily populated area where we got constant traffic going to and fro. I don't mind stepping off to one side when it happens occasionally. The wider we get, though, we also get those folks with the bicycles that think it's their own personal street, and then we're contending with them. So I just want to be complimentary to the effort made tonight, but at the same time, I want to be careful about the width of sidewalks and just assuming that big old developers are going to flip the tab for everything.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
I want to kind of, I guess, respond to that a little bit, because having pushed a stroller and walked a dog down Trade Street, you know, a 6 foot sidewalk is pretty important when you have to decide whether it's your dog or your stroller that's going to stay on the sidewalk. And so whatever those carrots are, I think that width is pretty important.
But the Trade Street wasn't developed by developers. It was the town over 100 years that failed to look at a wider sidewalk section. And we've been living with a really poor sidewalk section on Trade Street. So I just think we have to be very deliberative about what we do. If you're in a subdivision, should have sidewalks, but does the subdivision really need to have a 6 foot wide sidewalk when the street traffic is going at 15 miles an hour versus having a 10 foot wide sidewalk on South Trade when you have a different context? So I just don't want it to be one size fits all. I want to take it all into context.
Generally, I agree with that. I would say, though, at some point, you know, people thought a 4 foot sidewalk was adequate. I don't want to be the one that says a 5 foot sidewalk is adequate, and then in the future, people are complaining about the short-sightedness of this board at committing to 5 foot sidewalks.
I think the fact that this board wasn't even putting in sidewalks up to 10 years ago, just the fact we're talking about sidewalks is a huge victory. So everybody have hoverboards and drones, you'll be flying around, it won't matter.
Let me ask a final question. I know it's getting late and everybody's getting kind of tired, but where do we go from here? We've got an excellent presentation from Susan. What are our next steps? Maybe this is a question for Hazen.
Yeah.
I don't want to just have this great presentation and then we never talk about it again. What are we doing? What are we
And
going
very
to do?
enthusiastic too. High marks for enthusiasm. Absolutely. So my thought would be to bring back a proposal about widening the streets. You know, I think Susan, we all know how capable Susan is. Kind of this reasoned thoughtfulness of here's why the different widths work, and I think to bring it back to the board for these different street types, I think that's something we definitely can do. And then this notion of, you know, this high trust in staff. Where does staff see us building outwards, or where's some valuable gaps we can fill in?
That'd be,
you know, to be blunt, the tough part is the money, right? And
Sure,
I guess it always is. But we got to start somewhere, and then we find the money as we can.
Mr. Miller, you're on mute.
Hey, Hazen, are we talking about streets or sidewalks?
We're talking about sidewalks.
All right, but you're saying you use the term streets.
I'm sorry. So the different type of street, like the speed limit of the street, how much traffic, they get classified in different classifications. A residential neighborhood may be fine if it's a 6 foot sidewalk, but these bigger neighborhoods, or excuse me, these more busier streets need to have different tiers. And I think Susan's shaking her head yes.
Well, I'd like to stay razor focused on a gap. And if it's a 4 foot wide sidewalk over there and it's a 4 foot wide sidewalk over there, wouldn't we fill it in with a 4 foot wide sidewalk?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. So there's two discussions going on really at the same time. And that's why I wanted to make this distinction between gaps and projects. The gaps would be the width. We're not going to go 4 foot, 10 foot, 4 foot. We'll stay with 4 foot. And we understand that. And that's when you see on my cost estimate, the lower end is at 200. And that's because that's probably a 5 foot wide sidewalk. So I think we're talking about two separate things here.
All right, and my priority is the Fincher Farm property, which is, I believe, 200 feet. And if I'm generally good when we put in the 5 foot wide sidewalk at Graylock along John Street. I go there a couple times a week when I walk the Greenway up to the boardwalk, and I'll turn left and whatever. I find the 5 foot totally acceptable and wide enough. Now that's open for debate if someone wants a 6 foot, but if you want to test a 5 foot sidewalk, go over by Graylock in between the Heritage Trail and the 4 Mile Creek, and you can gauge it right there.
I think that's a 10 foot sidewalk.
That is 10 feet. Along John Street between Graylock Ridge Road and the Greenway is a 10 foot wide sidewalk.
Is it 5 foot further down?
Probably in the neighborhood, it's 5 feet.
I'm mistaken. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm mistaken.
So that's another excellent example of a 10 foot wide sidewalk. It goes to the Greenway and now it connects the trail to a Greenway. And so important to be 10 feet there.
I'm sorry.
So we do have, I think we got an action plan we can bring back to the board.
Great. Susan, thank you. Another great presentation. We appreciate your enthusiasm.
Right. Thank you all. Have a great evening.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's move on to item 11F, receive the monthly budget report from Teresa Falk.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and the board. We'll keep this financial report short and sweet. The month of July, as you all know, excuse me, is a transitional month. So the first half of the report is just kind of some preliminary look at how some revenues and expenditures came in, the way they look for the end of the fiscal year. And as you see, there were several categories of revenues that came in higher than budgeted. And actually today, I received information on the June local option sales tax, which will now push that percentage to 114.4% of the budget. So those sales tax numbers continue to rise and be greater than year to year comparisons. So that is a very positive thing for the town and for the state. And with the ongoing pandemic and the unknowns, the town of Matthews did a very good job at keeping spending under control so that we look to end the year on a very on a positive note, as you can see from the preliminary fiscal impact, that revenues exceed expenditures in both the general fund and the tourism fund. And again, that is due to the town being very conscious and staying on top of what was happening with revenues and keeping expenditures as low as possible. Of course, the month of July, there are not really a lot of revenues to speak of because one, ad valorem tax bills don't go out till the 1st of August. And as I just said, with the 2-month lag in local option sales tax, the money received in July and in August goes back into the prior year. So when you look at the report and you look at revenues of only $289,000 and in the general fund, and then $11,530 in the tourism fund, it doesn't seem like things are just looking at those numbers being very small, but that is to be expected this time of year. And expenditures are rather high in comparison to those revenues, but that is also because where we are on a fiscal year, a lot of our maintenance contracts and our annual software contracts and various operating contracts renew in July for the fiscal year, and the revenues catch up once ad valorem tax bills go out and we start back with sales tax for the current year.
All right. Great. Thank you. Good report. Are there any questions, comments for Teresa? All right. Thank you, Teresa. Sorry you were almost the very last item here, but you thanks for staying up for us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to 11G, discuss short-term rental housing. Darren.
Thank you, Mayor, Board. Thank you, Jay. Right, so the town did receive a complaint about short-term vacation rentals. So we did provide a kind of an overview of the way it's handled throughout the state and some of the state legislation that's going through right now. So these short-term rental properties or vacation rentals, these are typically rented for less than 30 days. They're on-demand services such as Airbnb and VRBO. Staff did find about 22 single-family rentals on Airbnb's website. Just for reference, we have about 9,000 single-family housing units, just for a comparison on those percentages. So really the big 5 communities that regulate these short-term rentals or vacation rental properties in the state are Asheville, Blowing Rock, Brevard, Cornelius, and Wilmington. And then really up until probably 2019 or 2020, those were the only 5 in the state that were actually regulating it all. So these are generally these do concentrate around areas of high tourism. The city of Asheville does regulate them as a land use. They do require on-site hosts for some of them. They do require an annual zoning permit, district limitation, occupational or occupancy limits, and then they do apply penalties. Those aren't met. The town of Cornelius actually petitioned the state for a local act for the ability to regulate. So far, they're the only ones, they're the only municipality in the state that has that local act. That's set to expire December 31st, so the end of the year. I believe they petitioned the state to extend that to 2031. I'm not sure the status on that though. And then I didn't mention it here, but the city of Wilmington actually had their ordinance struck down, I believe it was last year. And so into last year, beginning of this year, they were actually going through a complete rewrite of their short-term rentals and vacation rentals ordinance. So currently there are 2 bills proposed in the state or by the state legislature right now. It's House Bill 829 and Senate Bill 105. 105 is the budget for the state. Those 2 are identical. We have been monitoring those bills through the American Planning Association's North Carolina chapter's legislative committee and the North Carolina League of Municipalities legislative committee. The APA-NC legislative committee hadn't really issued a red flag on any of those. But the North Carolina League of Municipality did make a statement that it could potentially impact local government's ability to regulate short-term rentals. The changes in those bills, it was really minor, or that bill was very minor. It was just the remove of a phrase under Article 11 or Article 12 of this chapter. And then I did attach at the end, we can review that. But right now, yeah, so you can see in context the red lettering. So this is this section is part of North Carolina's minimum state housing regulations. It's a subsection regarding periodic inspections. In that section, a local government cannot create like essentially like a registration list. That was one of the reasons that the city of Wilmington's ordinance was struck down, is because they had created like a lottery system for who could and could not regulate, or who could and could not rent their home as through the platforms Airbnb and VRBO. Yeah. So right now, the staff recommendation for any action to take, would really make a recommendation not to take any action just with the pending legislation. The relative newness. I think the only other town that I've seen that's enacted other than those 5 are the city of Southport. I believe the city of Charlotte has put something on the books as well. But I think there's a lot of unknowns surrounding the market. So it wasn't that long ago, just in rentals in general, we were looking at long-term stay hotels. So I think with these disruptive technologies and new business models coming through, there could be some impact in the future. And then generally just with the murkiness around the state and some of the laws and case laws that are going on right now, we recommend like pulling back and seeing how those things play out. That concludes the staff report. Are there any questions or comments?
I have a question, perhaps directed towards Charlie. We received a complaint from someone that lives here in Matthews about our neighbor having an Airbnb and with no host on site, and she claimed, many people there partying late at night, et cetera, in a neighborhood. Is there any laws on the books in Matthews that we can regulate that in any way outside of short-term rental?
I would have to go through the code. Nothing jumps out in my mind that any regulations that we have other than normal zoning, but I don't think that would have an impact on it.
Don't we have some sort of regulation that X number of people that aren't related can't inhabit a home of X size or something? I seem to remember.
Yes, we have a limit on how the federal government defines a single family residence, but you can have up to like 6 unrelated people living in the house. But living there is a permanency kind of associated with it.
Sorry, you had
the noise ordinance, Mayor. We do have the noise ordinance, but this may not be a noisy situation that this person's complaining about.
Mr. Miller, do you have a comment? Question?
Yeah, I've run across this problem in a condominium association of 102 condos. And what we did was enforced that the fact that you had to have a 30-day rental agreement. In other words, most common is a year rental. Second most common is 6-month rental, and third most is month to month, which is common when people extend their plans. But without a 30-day rental agreement, you can't, you're not allowed, because you never know what kind of criminals or druggies or parties could go on, and it does affect the neighbors that own and live next door. So that's always been it can pose a problem. I thought that we had an ordinance in Matthews where you can't run a business out of your home. Of course, nowadays with people working from home, I don't know how enforceable that is, but 30-day rental agreement is the best approach I can find.
But those are generally HOA type regulations.
I would agree.
Hazen, did staff respond to the person that wrote the letter complaining about the Airbnb? Do you know?
I don't know if we said thanks for the information. I mean, I don't remember, because we don't have any. She wasn't specific, like there's a noise ordinance or there's a dog running around barking or anything like that. She was just concerned about the concept of Airbnbs.
Right.
So we didn't respond. We didn't answer her question. Let me say it like that.
Mr. Urban.
I guess to piggyback on that though, could we not have staff react and say, hey, look, the town board looked at this, staff took the time to look at it. Right now, it looks like the state's kind of, taking a hands-off approach, but if something comes up, please call our police department, please call Carlo. I've got her email up right here, and some things are a little suspect in her wording where she talks about safety concerns of up to 50 new people in our cul-de-sac weekly. Well, that seems excessive to the point where I think the police would have been called. So I think just a polite thing saying, hey, we get it, we understand, we reviewed it, this is where the state comes down on at this standpoint. We're going to keep monitoring the situation. But just, yeah, I agree with Hazen. She didn't really make a specific ask, but the inferences are throughout the email.
Yeah, we're happy to respond.
Thank you.
I know the mayor of Asheville has made it known that she's very concerned about the state taking action because there's a lot of Airbnbs in Asheville.
Yeah.
We're relatively, new to that whole realm, but you can imagine Asheville or all those, as Darren said, those touristy areas have a lot of Airbnbs. Are there any other questions?
Just Darren had pointed out that I think the state's regulations are looking at limiting the opportunity for local control on air.
That's right. And that's the mayor of Asheville is very concerned about that.
Correct.
Any other questions for Darren? All right, thank you. We'll move on to the mayor's report then.
Mayor Renee had her hand up.
I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Garner. I didn't see you there.
It's okay. I thought you were just trying to get through the end of this meeting.
I'm really pushing.
I just, if there are things that, if this comes up again, if there are things that we can tell residents about parking or about noise that are specific bits of information the staff would like to share with us, then I'll be glad to pass that along, because I do have a feeling this will come up more and more in the future.
Yeah, I have heard anecdotally, from my kids and stuff, with college age kids, hey, let's go rent an Airbnb and X, Y, and Z, and they pack 30 kids in a house or something and then party. That would be problematic if that's in one of our neighborhoods and that sort of thing was going on. Fortunately, there's not a lot of people that I think it is confined more to tourist type areas and not places like Matthews, which are less touristy. Any other comments on that before I move on to the mayor's report? All right. I just want to make a quick observation. At our Thursday night meeting, when we had kind of an emergency meeting and we enacted, not unanimously, but we enacted a mask mandate, and it was somewhat controversial. And I want to just say thank you to those citizens in Matthews that reached out to me personally on both sides of the issue. Particularly those that were against it, because the overwhelming majority were very respectful, saying, hey, most of the comments said, thank you for your service, starting out with that, and then, but you're an idiot. No, they would go on, but there's something else. But most of them were very respectful, and we debated ideas and didn't delve into getting really nasty. And I really appreciate that. I think that's what makes Matthews so great. So thank you for those that disagreed, but we discussed the ideas and why we thought they were important or not, and that's good communication. I appreciate that. Commissioner Whitley mentioned that the Pfizer vaccine has received full FDA approval. We fully expect that many private employers are now going to require their employees to get vaccinated. And as I've said all along, we certainly don't have the authority to force anybody to get vaccinated, but if there are still those in our community that aren't, I hope you will seriously consider getting vaccinated, particularly with this full approval. As Commissioner Whitley mentioned, and others, I've had a lot of people talk to me this past week about COVID. We're seeing young people, otherwise healthy people, getting COVID and dying from it. This is not like catching a cold. So I do this, I think, at every one of our meetings, but if you're unvaccinated, please get a vaccine and please wear a mask. I think it's been shown that we can't force you to everybody in town to wear a mask, but I just ask you to do the right thing and to look out for your friends and neighbors. Wear a mask for them if you don't want to wear one for yourself, so that you don't inadvertently spread COVID to somebody that could get really sick from it or even die. So thank you for that. That's all I've got. I'll move on to the attorney's report.
No report, Mayor.
Town manager report.
No report, Mayor.
All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mayor, before we go, I want to thank Hazen and the highway and the police department. Hooker Cop was a great success. We had not had a gathering in over 18 months. The 5 churches came together, all pastors were there. This was, believe it or not, was the biggest turnout of police officers that we've had. We had somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 Matthews police officers. Captain Sis showed up along with several officers, had the sheriff of Mecklenburg County, the DA of Mecklenburg County, one of our representatives was there, and the captain of the highway patrol in this area. But we had a wonderful time. We fed probably about 175 people came through, not all at the same time. I think the most we had in the fellowship hall was maybe 50 at one time. Everybody wore masks, except you were eating, but it was just a great success. And just want to thank you, Hazen, the police department and the town just showed up in just great fashion. They all had a good part, and they took a lot of pictures with the town. So get a chance, hopefully we'll get some of those pictures back and you can see all the fellowship that everybody had.
Thank you, Larry. I would like to publicly apologize to our police officer, let them know why I wasn't there. I was taking my son to college in New York, which means I was driving for 28 hours out of 40 or something. So I would have preferred to have been there eating that good food and saying thank you to all of our great policemen. So pass that along. Any other final comments before we adjourn?
I make
get a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn for Commissioner Whitley. Do we have a second?
Second.
I hate to do this, but we got to take a roll call vote. Commissioner Urban.
Okay, that's fine. Yes.
Commissioner Whitley.
Yes, sir. Good night, everybody.
Mr. Bland.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Yes.
Commissioner McCool.
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Thank you, guys. Great meeting. Have a good night.
Have a good night.